you salute the flag? Mr. Dolan, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please stay standing for a brief moment of silence for our men and women serving us abroad and here at home. Thank you. Please be seated. All right. We have a motion. We need a motion to go into public comment or no? I still don't get that. All right. We're going to take public comment. First thing we'll do is we have boards, committees, commission updates, and we have Paul Margolin here from the Solid Waste Advisory Board. Paul, would you join us for a moment?
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Coming in.
Paul Margolin. I'm here to represent the Solid Waste Committee, give you an update or status on the committee. I'm also here with Joel Sadler, who is one of last year's Volunteers of the Year, I'm proud to say. And he's here as the coordinator of the Beautify Londonderry program to bring you up to date on that, which just finished recently.
Mm-hmm.
And actually have a few. So Joel, if you want to give them a quick rundown.
Yep, so this year we had a lot of volunteers this year for Beautify Londonderry, and it was even with the tough weather that we've had for this spring, it was good to have so many volunteers. As you can see, we had, this year 615 town residents, community groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and they cleaned up an amazing amount of work. They did a lot of work. This year we had 54 different groups, from Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, to Cub Scouts, Pathfinders, and a lot of church groups. So it was great to see so many people out there. We were amazed at how many tires we found and large bags of trash in certain areas. So we had quite a good number of items that we picked up. This year we had 32 different streets that we worked on in town. So everything from South Road to Gilcrest was all cleaned up. So it was a good effort by a lot of volunteers and the donors that, again, helped out with the mulch and the different landscaping supplies. So we did all the six schools, and we also did all the town properties, such as the South and Central Fire Station, the fire departments, the police department, Leach Library. So it was well represented by a lot of different groups. So it seems like there's still a lot of good volunteer groups out there that are helping out, which is great, even with the tough spring weather that we had. So.
What do you guys do with all the trash that you accrue?
Well, a lot of it, some of it gets recycled. Most of it goes through, they pick it up through the town. I know the tires, that goes to a tire shredder. So there's quite a large number of tires and things that we found this year.
Yeah, we have a system with DPW where they get a call on where the roads, where bags were left along roads picked up that weekend, and they come along Monday, pick it up, and take care of it through our in-house vendor.
Cool. That's great.
So one of our goals as a committee this year was to expand the program, and one of the key features of this is to show you that we are pleased to have seen significant growth. Overall volunteers in groups, in streets. Not sure if we have how many streets we have exactly, but we're making a dent. And you can see one group in particular, we found over 400 tires in the woods. So that was not a buried treasure we were necessarily looking for, but it's certainly making that spot of town a lot nicer. One other thing we'll mention is that this year, Stonyfield Farms, which has always been a big supporter of Beautify Londonderry, held their first annual 5K road race. And they told us that they would be donating 10% of their proceeds to Beautify Londonderry. So that's very nice of them to support us that way.
Yeah, that is. It's a very good donation.
So, thank you, Joel. So moving on, just a note, we have 2 new landscapers taking care of welcome signs for us. Trimmers and Shady Hill Greenhouses has been doing a great job for us the last few years. And we had 2 signs turn over, and I'm happy to say 2 local landscapers are taking those over, Independence Lawns and Blackburn Outdoor Services. So those will continue to welcome folks into town and be nicely turned out. The 3rd page, I won't go into detail, but this is a summary of the responsibilities of the committee, the different programs that we've formed, that we monitor, always trying to find ways to improve, find ways to divert the amount of waste that the residents and the municipal offices generate. Motor Vehicle Reclamation Trust Fund, that's what's funded the renovation of the drop-off center this year that just finished, and we're hearing rave reviews about that. If you haven't been down there, I urge people to go down and make use of it. It's much safer, easier, cleaner to use. So we think that was money well spent. We have a call to educate the public on solid waste issues for safety's sake, as well as to help them find ways to reduce their trash. And we just started a column in the local paper called Green in Londonderry. It's another outlet for that. Hazardous waste programs, we talked about Beautify Londonderry and the welcome signs.
When's the next oil drop-off, Paul?
That's usually the first Saturday of each month.
Okay.
So would have been this past Saturday.
Hey, John.
The next page gives you a 10-year view of trends in trash generated by the town, as well as recycling amounts. And you can see they're both going in the right direction. In particular, those last 2 years since we put in the new contract has had a significant impact. So we're really pleased with the benefit that that's given us in the first 2 years of the 5-year contract.
Sure is going in the right direction anyway.
Yeah. And on the last page, I'll just mention these are our goals this year. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, to expand participation and the benefits, the impacts of all those volunteers out there on the streets and on town property, beautifying the town, monitoring and publicizing the new drop-off center that's just been overhauled, investigating future options for solid waste handling and recycling. We're always talking with our vendor. We had them in a couple meetings ago to talk about what's going on in the recycling and the trash management industry, looking for ways that we can further improve solid waste services and reduce the amount that we have to manage and the amount we have to pay for that trash. We are launching a litter subcommittee this year, and I don't know, Margot, if they've contacted you yet, but if not, they will, because they're anxious to get started and recommend some measures to take in town. They'll be meeting with us later this week to talk about their initial proposals, and then we'll be having them come see you folks and get your thoughts and feedback. And this committee's been around a little over 20 years, and its activities have really transcended what it was originally set up to do. Mainly focused, of course, on solid waste and recycling, but we've taken on new directions, what with things like Beautify Londonderry and the welcome signs and all. So we're also looking at our charter, and we'll probably want to come see you sometime in the next year to dust that off and recommend some changes, some updates to that. And I guess the last point I wanted to make was that we've had a core of 3 volunteers coordinating the Beautify Londonderry program the last 2 years, ever since it became totally voluntary. We had a 4th member join this year. They've done great work, as you folks acknowledged last year, which was great. and we'd like to petition for making them a formal subcommittee reporting to the Solid Waste Committee. And so we'd like to put that on the table for you tonight.
Okay. Dave, can we make a note of that?
Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
And that's what we have to say. Do you have any questions for us?
Councilman?
Great job, Paul.
All right. Paul, thank you, everybody, for their work. I mean, it's really appreciative of the fact that it's volunteer, and people go out and they take pride in picking up all the trash that, others are throwing out. It's great that people keep doing it and keep up the great work. And thank you to everybody.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And I just want to mention that the committee was also working on a prototype here for...
I was going to ask you what that was.
Yeah. This was actually inspired by Mr. Farrell, who had mentioned that he was having a problem jumping up and down on his trash, get it all to fit.
Can I test the prototype?
Well, it's not quite at that stage yet.
Oh,
It's still developmental.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be, the guinea pig.
Okay. We figured that could not only provide a service to residents, but maybe be a revenue producer as well.
Always thinking outside the box.
It's all about revenue.
There you go. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate it. Appreciate it. Okay. Is there any other public comment in relations to anything else not on the agenda tonight?
As most of you know, I've been an employee of the town of Londonderry for about 23 years, and this is probably the third or fourth time that I've come up to the microphone and spoken as a resident. I've always felt that it was better to step back and not do that while you're an employee because people can't see you change your hats. But this is my resident hat, my taxpayer hat. Excuse me. I was watching the school board meeting from a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, and one of the conversations that they were having got me to thinking, and I decided that I had to come and I had to speak. And that is, they're talking about South School and the little second grader down there who had to send a letter to the superintendent because of the dog poop, on the grounds down there. I've been thinking for a long time, probably ever since I got my puppy, that Londonderry has so many dogs, and that's probably something that we should think about, is how do we address our dogs? And I think it would be a wonderful thing if the town council would consider forming a committee that could look into establishing a dog park in Londonderry and find a piece of suitable land, hopefully, figure out how that would happen, how it would be paid for, all of those kinds of things. The one night I really wanted to be there, Meg's not there. She could tell us how many hundreds and hundreds, or we thousands and thousands, Dave, do you know?
I do
of
not.
Dogs. I know it's a lot of dogs. I remember seeing the number before. And I do think that it would be a real service to the community. People, as you know, they love their dogs like they love their children, and some of them love dogs instead of children. So to have a place where the community could get together that was a safe place for everyone and a clean place for everyone. There are many, many dog parks throughout the state, and they're kept very clean, very safe and sanitary. And I'd like to make that suggestion and ask the town council to consider creating a committee to start researching that.
Okay. Dave, how do we go about that?
Well, if the council wants us to do that, we can come back with different ideas for you.
That's something the council wants to take up at this point?
Is Dottie willing to lead it? Seriously.
Seriously, if you'll allow an employee to be on a committee, I have no problem with that.
I don't know, will we allow that?
You have in the past.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I've been to the one in Derry, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Committees only succeed if people have a passion about something.
Yep.
She does. She probably knows other people that do. Committees only succeed if someone is passionate about it. That's just one point of view.
I'm passionate. Anybody who's got me started talking about my puppy knows that.
I might maybe expand the discussion. You know, we're now as a community of 25,000. I think we don't have a leash law in this town. I think only our ball fields require our dogs to be leashed, I believe. I guess it might be worthwhile looking at, is it time for us to entertain that type of control and investigate what our surrounding communities do, and are we at a point where we ought to have positive control over our pets as well?
Yeah, and the other thing, I might get booed for this, but I know in Boston you have to pick it up, otherwise you get fined. So as much as I see it one way, there's another way too
Yeah,
that we can
absolutely.
solve it. So.
It's fine being by committee.
All right, Dave, we pretty much have a consensus to
Okay.
look into it, and Dottie is publicly spoken for it, and on record, the head man. Anyway, it's a good idea.
Thank
It's
you.
definitely something worthy of looking at, and, you know, there are an awful lot of dogs out there. I know, I've got 3 of them in town, so.
Mhm.
Now, how are we going to word the
Well, 2 of them
headlines?
now. Stephanie took Tink to
We're gonna read
Raymond.
the headlines.
How are the headlines going to read tomorrow in the newspaper?
Uh-oh.
What's that? So, anyway,
Dottie's relegated to the dogs or something like that.
down with the dogs.
Londonderry's gone
Thank
to the
you.
dogs.
Gone to the dogs. So, all right, thanks, Dottie. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to public hearing. Can I get a motion to go into it?
Motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have Resolution 2011-08 on the table relative to the discontinuance of a portion of Kelly Road. Can I get somebody to read it?
We can vote on the public hearing first.
Oh, sorry. We need a vote to go into public hearing, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative, 5-0. We're in public hearing. Thank you, Tom.
Read it for you, Sean.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Resolution 2011-08, a resolution relative to the discontinuance of highway portion of Kelly Road. First reading 5/16/2011, second reading public hearing 6/6/2011. Whereas the Town Council, in accordance with RSA 231:43, has received a petition to discontinue and relinquish all public interest in a portion of Class 6 highway known as Kelly Road between Tax Map 9, Lot 24, and Tax Map 9, Lot 12A, and whereas the matter of discontinuing a highway under RSA 231:43 is within the authority of the Town Council, and whereas the aforementioned highway was discontinued subject to gates and bars by voters at the 1970 town meeting, now therefore be it resolved by the Town Council, Londonderry Town Council, that the discontinuance of a portion of Kelly Road, as shown on map entitled Kelly Road Discontinuance Plan, Map Road Substation, prepared by T.F. Moran, Inc., Bedford, New Hampshire, dated May 10, 2011, is hereby approved subject to the conditions that the Public Service Company of New Hampshire shall indemnify and hold harmless the town of Londonderry from any claims arise from the town's council's decision to discontinue said portions of Kelly Road. So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Duval. I'm an engineer with TF Moran. And with me is Pat Pinault from PSNH to answer any questions you might have. Just very briefly, what's being proposed is a discontinuance of a portion of Kelly Road between Shasta and South Mammoth. It's about a 250-foot length of road, and Public Service does own the land on both sides of this road. There's actually 5 properties along this section of Kelly Road, and 2 of them are PSNH. The purpose is to site a mobile substation. That's purpose of the mobile substation is to improve system reliability. This mobile substation expansion was approved by the town back in 2008, along with expansion of the substation itself. The substation improvements are done. Now they're ready to site the mobile transformer. It was located west of Kelly Road in order not to discontinue Kelly Road, but there's a bit of a spider web of existing lines there. It's much simpler and safer to install it on Kelly Road. So now that the project is ready to move ahead, it just makes sense to take advantage of this. Kelly Road is already Class 6, subject to gates and bars. It was discontinued back in 1970. I think it's a fairly simple matter, and it makes good sense from the perspective of PSNH to ask for this road to be closed so that they can park their unit directly under the affected lines. It's easy to get in, easy to get out. It would enhance the safety and system reliability of the substation, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. I'm going to bring it back to the council, if you don't mind. Dave, do you have any recommendations from staff as far as this goes?
Yeah, we don't have any concerns at all about discontinuance. Public Service acknowledges if there are any claim for damages, which would be extremely remote in this case, since essentially they're asking for a discontinuance of the middle section, and the rest of the butters can access theirs if should they need to on both sides. So we don't see any reason why the request should not be granted.
Okay. Is there anybody in the public that has any concerns over the discontinuance? You want to step up and come to the microphone? You can sit right over there if you'd like. We just need your name and your address for the record, please.
Tom Pajak, 333 Mammoth Road, the abutter to the lines. My biggest concern is, will this affect the property right in front of my house?
The only way I can see it affecting your property is we would just have to pull a mobile substation in using that road, get it in the fence, and then whatever the equipment used to bring it in will be out of there. So it's just going to be a short time.
But you still have the other property, the other access road to get back to the substation.
Correct.
So why would you have to cut in front of my house and probably cut trees to get anything through there?
Well, the location of the mobile substation is, as you know, closer to your house than the other end. And am I reading this wrong? Let me ask you this. You're at 333, you said?
Yes.
Could I show you a picture? And
Yes. I'd love to see a site there. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so that's the substation, yes.
this
Am
here.
I on that side of the road? There's the substation.
Oh, the substation's up here, actually. This is the store.
Capture this on part of the
It's
minutes.
gotta be me right there.
How do we handle it?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that is.
Don't you?
Shouldn't they
Okay,
have done this before?
The substation would be sitting in this area here.
talking.
In order to get the mobile in
Once
and
we
out,
can't
we
hear
have to
anything.
drive straight through. That's the only way we can get the mobile in and out. Am I speaking loud enough?
Not really.
I apologize.
Carry on.
Figure it all out, let us know.
Okay,
We got all night.
why we would have to use his, or right out front of his driveway to pull the mobile through. Well,
Sure.
because the mobile is such a large mobile, there's only one way we could pull it in. The 115 lines, which is the high side of the mobile, now, the mobile substation is a transformer. We go from a 115 to a 34. Well, we have to pull it in that way using the drive going right out front of your property in order to get the mobile into the correct location. We couldn't come over here, pull it in, and then back out our tractor trailer that would carry the mobile.
Now, is this mobile a permanent fixture?
No, it is gonna be a fence here. The only time you would use the mobile is in the event of a failure of one of the transformers in the Mammoth Road substation.
So at that point, they come through and clear cut an area to get their trucks through?
They wouldn't have to clear cut, actually. They would widen the road just a little bit, just to get.
I've seen your little bits. I've lived there long enough to see what that looks like with a
Right,
little
right.
bit.
You know, we could always talk about a buffer as well, if you're really concerned about that.
Well, that's what this tree line is my buffer to
Right.
Mammoth Road, and it's my privacy.
Absolutely, I agree with you. As I said, we could actually put some plantings along
Is
there
there something-
if we do happen to pull some of the trees back. But our intention is to actually, if we were going to widen it away from your home, not towards your home.
Unfortunately, that's where all the trees are, is, you know, when you're gonna get into the town properties to widen out.
Right. Now, the area needed is only a 20-foot drive, and if we already have that existing, we wouldn't have to cut any trees down. It's just to pull the tractor trailer and mobile right through. So I guess we could talk about, you know, we could go out to your home and take a measurement and go over this with you if you'd like.
That would be interesting to see.
Jim?
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Yep.
question.
Yep.
Does this discontinuance really have anything to do with the question that the resident has?
It's a separate issue because the discontinuance is where we're gonna be parking the mobile substation. There will be a fence around it. It's just getting the mobile in and out using that Kelly Road access, which is,
Which you guys really,
Public access,
which
right?
really you could do anyway, right?
I'm sorry?
Which you could still do right now anyway. Is that-
Absolutely,
yeah,
right, right.
okay.
And that's where we would park them over in an event of an outage right now. We put a temporary fence up.
But if you abandoned the road in front of my house and I took it over, that would give me more of a right, would it?
I would assume it would.
Correct.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure it would. So is this something that, would you, I guess we'll bring it back to the council. So obviously, this gentleman needs to have a little bit of a discussion before he's okay with signing off on it, so
Well,
shall
it
we
also
move this
doesn't,
along?
it also doesn't sound like, yeah, it also doesn't sound like it can't be done without discontinuance either. I haven't, you know, I know you're asking for discontinuance, but can we get it done without it?
Well, the reason for the discontinuance is.
For a temporary use, right?
Right, but we would be putting up a permanent fence in the area, and there would be some structures that would be needed to cap the 34 kV line, and
There's a lot of land there, though. Is there some way that you could put the fence off the road?
well, after several field visits, you know, there's wetland on one side, I believe, and you know, maybe you could explain this better, why we can't go off the road.
Go ahead, John.
Well-
Sir, generally when we, you know, having served on the planning board in the past, generally when we run into these kind of discussions, it's usually very productive for the landowner, yourself, and possibly a member of the town staff, all to go out there, take a look at what you're gonna do, all agree about what's reasonable, and then have that discussion, and then come back to the presiding board once you've settled all those issues, because frankly, we can't get it done here, and we can't get it done at the planning board levels, and if the council feels that way, that would probably be a good use of their time.
Yeah. So at this point, because of the gentleman's concerns, I think, you know, how do you feel? Do you want to
With
continue
his
this
concerns, I
and
would,
work out the details?
absolutely, we have to continue it.
Tom?
I think they should do that.
So we pretty much have a consensus among the board that at this point, you guys would probably be better off working with the gentleman who has the concern and taking a visit out there, talk about it, and try to come to a consensus on what's okay. Then if you want, we can schedule for the next meeting, which is the 20th. Do you think you guys can probably meet between then?
I would imagine.
Is that
Shouldn't be a
doable?
problem.
Okay, so why don't we can move this to the 20th meeting?
You want to continue the hearing to...
Make a motion to continue the hearing till the 20th of June.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving this to the 20th, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative, 5-0.
Thank you.
So that'll be the best solution at this point, so we're not sitting here spinning our wheels.
Absolutely.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have, Mr. Chairman, do we have anybody else that wanted to speak on?
John Curtis, 321 Mammoth Road. In regards to this issue that just came up, I would recommend to the board that we also get a site plan established before they come back as well. Reason being is that there was a site plan done, I believe, in 2008, which I spoke to as well. This site plan was to be put at the backside of 333 Mammoth Road's property, where they had done a tremendous amount of site work to basically put that facility that they're talking about, that temporary generator, in that site. That was approved, that was worked through, PSNH approved this. Okay, now they're talking about looking for discontinuance of a road so they can move it forward on the property without any site plan. Now, I would strongly suggest that before we give them the discontinuance of the road, that we see the site plan, let him work with the abutter, and come up with something that's a little more reasonable. There's no reason why they cannot do what they originally planned to do. So I think it's important to note that at this particular point, that this is also going to affect my property as well, because the way the road cuts, that cuts in front of my property. Okay, and so I'm basically an abutter to the road as well. And I also understand the concerns of Mr. Pajak as well, because they will come in and cut that down, and that is a buffer.
What side of it are you on, John?
I am on the south side of 333. So the road basically cuts in on my north driveway and cuts across the face of his property. And where they want to put the actual site will be to the forward side of his property. Where before they were on the back side of the property, we had talked about putting up some trees and buffers and so forth for that, and that was all approved. So there was a site plan back in 2008, which was approved by the planning board, and to my knowledge, they were moving forward with it until we hear that they just want to get this abandonment of the road. So I think
this is kind of a new curve to it. Yeah.
This is absolutely a new curve to it. So I would suggest that we kind of tread a little bit slower than they would like to move, and look at what the plan really is here. They have done all the improvements in the backside where the main power station is, but they've never done anything with the temporary setup.
And the planning staff is extensively familiar with this. I mean, it might be a very good idea as the staff to engage in some way, just so that the right kind of behavior comes out at the other end.
Yeah, I'm not certain if the staff was engaged. I tried to get in with Tim earlier today to have a discussion around this to find out what's going on. I have not been able to have a discussion with him yet.
I mean, on the original site plan.
Right, on the original site plan, there was a full plan grade level type stuff, and the reason why they wanted to put it there, because we had some concerns about where they were putting it in the first place, and obviously value to property is a concern, because now to the property of 333, I think they were within 30 feet of his property. So there was a plan to put a fenced area in, a graded fence area with trees and so forth, and the reason why they wanted it there in the first place was they could easily clamp onto the lines that go across out of that substation onto Mammoth Road. And now this is a different twist where they're saying it's easier this way. So I'm not too sure why they're moving this. There is an access road that is maintained by them, very well maintained, mind you, to get back to the substation. They have brought heavy equipment in. So it doesn't make any sense to take this abandonment and then try to get everything up Kelly Road, where they already have an access road that's better than Kelly Road.
It's a wild guess. It's probably cheaper for them, they figured out.
If the road's already established, though, Tom, that's the thing. I understand. I might agree with that, but.
Well, if our staff goes out and takes a look at it and gets involved, they can also share their point of view with us, which may or may not be helpful. I don't know. I mean, it's.
Can we get Dave? Can we get Tim or a member of staff involved in this?
Right.
That way we can have some of these answers, so that when they do expect to come back on the 20th, we're not going to be sitting here and going, okay, so. That's all set, but now we have this other issue, so it'll be good if we had their input too.
Sure.
Okay?
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. Okay, so we've continued the public hearing. That's it for this round. So let's go to old business. Resolution 2011-05, relative to the allocation of cable franchise fees. Could you?
Resolution number 2011-05, a resolution relative to the allocation of cable franchise fees. First reading was held on March 21st, 2011. Continued first reading was held on June 6th, 2011. The second public hearing is scheduled for June 20th, 2011. Whereas the town has entered into an agreement with Comcast to provide cable television services in Londonderry, and whereas part of the agreement requires the collection of a franchise fee, of which a portion is surplus to the needs of the cable division, and whereas the town council formulated its adopted fiscal year 12 general operating budget, which included revenues from the cable franchise fee to offset the community's property tax burden. Now therefore be it resolved by the Londonderry Town Council that of the 5% cable franchise fee, 1.5% shall be deposited in the general fund and 3.5% deposited in the cable special revenue fund effective July 1st, 2011. So
Chairman,
moved.
I make a motion to accept the first reading and schedule a public hearing on the matter for June 20th.
Second.
Okay, we have well, actually, the first motion was for Tom for reading it. So, how do we do that?
I'll
His-
withdraw
his-
mine and.
Yeah, if Tom
Right, so
withdraws.
Tom's motion, all right, you withdrew yours.
Well, I'll second whoever you decide.
Second time.
I'll second it. I'll second his. All right, so then we can go into a new one.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. And Tom, you want to vote to move this along to the public hearing? So, is that what we do?
All right, second that.
All right, so what is your motion and second do?
I'm seconding Tom's motion to move to the public hearing on June 20th.
Okay. Now that that's figured out, we now have a motion and a second to move it to a public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative, 5-0, so we will public hearing on this on the 20th. That's why you didn't give it to me. The mystery is solved. Okay, order 2011-06, relative to the distribution of conservation funds to purchase a conservation easement for 587 Mammoth Road. Okay. So last we were, if I can remember, we had some questions, Dave, for you to get back to us on? Legal questions? Yeah.
Yeah, the issue was whether, if the town simply purchased an easement as opposed to an outright acquisition, would there be some sort of exposure? We were talking about a Medicare lien for elderly homeowners, and town council has responded that there is an inherent risk in any transaction the town is part of for land transactions if the IRS or Medicare believes it may be a fraudulent sale. Town attorney feels that it's a very remote possibility, particularly in light of our conservation easements, whereby we do secure the services of an independent appraiser for a market value assessment of the property. And so Bart feels that we're purchasing the easements at fair market value, so the chances of a fraudulent sale accusation are slim at best. So town attorney recommends that issue alone is not reason to deny an easement based upon that concern, because he doesn't think that concern would ever come back to impact the town in this or other matters of conservation easements, given the town's practice of securing an independent appraisal on the property.
Okay. All right, so bringing this back to the council, we talked at length about this at our last meeting, and all that we really had left before we were to bring it back to a vote was to have Dave get that legal question answered. So are there any further comments from the council in regards to this?
Yeah, if I could,
Sure.
Mr. Merrill. First of all, in the last meeting, thank you for coming forward with your explanation, because very frankly, based on the direction that the council had given to the Open Space Task Force and the Conservation Commission, we really weren't supposed to see anything until after all that was completed. And if you didn't come forward and share what your family needs were, we would, one, I wouldn't have known. Two is that, I thank you for doing that, because it does change my opinion on what I was thinking. And just for anybody else who comes to these things, I mean, if you talk to us, we'll listen. So, thank you.
Yeah, I've been considering some of the questions about whether we should be acquiring easements or trying to spend a little bit more money and just acquire the land outright. And as I look around and see what are other communities doing, and what is the general accepted practice in this regard, and what's the best thing for the community. What I have seen is that, for the most part, towns aren't acquiring property outright. They are acquiring easements for a couple of reasons. One, it's less money for the taxpayers. Secondly, the easements last in perpetuity. As land changes hands from owner to owner, the easement stays with the property. Whereas if the town were to, if a town acquires property outright, it moves from political body to political body as to what the disposition of that land should be. So, whereas an easement lives on and on, the political occupants of the decision-making body change rather frequently. So a scenario could be that land is acquired and the political body 10 years down the road decides to sell that property or to turn it into a marketplace or to do something different than what the original intention or preservation was intended. So I think that because it's less money to acquire the easement, because it lasts in perpetuity, and secondly, it kind of locks down the intent of preservation and prevents future development. And lastly, if the town acquires property outright, it then becomes responsible to maintain that property and to care for it or to if it's farmland, to either farm it or to let it go into a wild state or whatever. Whereas if it stays with an active owner, then that active owner has the responsibility to maintain the property and to care for it and so forth. So again, that saves the town not only the effort but the cost of whatever that maintenance might have been. So I think that it makes in total on behalf of the taxpayers, I think it makes more sense for us to be acquiring easements as opposed to the outright property based on that research and having looked at the issue in that context.
All right, I guess, Tom, do you want to go or you want to get Joe first?
I'm going to say that I continue to disagree with regarding purchasing of easements. I think it ties us to a partnership with the owners of the property. As you said, Mr. Merrill, at the Open Space Task Force hearing, you went and consulted an expert on it, and they said, even your expert said that easements are not indestructible, that they can be. It's not easy to do, but it's possible. And I think it's my responsibility here in the town council, when spending taxpayer dollars, to make sure that we don't have that as a possibility. And I think we can achieve that by buying the land outright and with the long-term lease affording your family or any other family the same rights that they would have with an easement. And it would also alleviate the problems of maintenance by the town, because we can make that a condition. So I'm not convinced that an easement purchase is the better way to going. But also, having looked at some things, I have some other issues. I did attend the Open Space Task Force meeting, and I learned something there, that the town has approximately 15 and about 5% of land under easement now, or ownership has been protected. But another 15 or so % is already protected as wetlands. We're at 30% effective protected land. And according to the 2006 task force report, the goal was 25%. 25% of the land was considered necessary to ensure the sustainability of natural resources. So I think while we're waiting for the final Open Space Task Force report to come through, when we've already achieved what the 2006 report suggested, which was ensure 25% of the town's land be protected, I'm really at a point where I don't think this purchase is viable at this time. I think until the report comes in. I mean, the amount that's being asked to be spent is approximately 20%, 25% of the current funds in the conservation fund. And we don't know where the town wants to go with this. And so with all due respect, I think we need to defer until we get the answer on this, especially where the last report from the Conservation Commission says protect 25% of the land, and we're at 30.
Yeah, I have to agree with Councilor Frida. I'm not in favor of conservation easements. I think when you spend the taxpayer money and you really just buy a title to something or a use, I think it's a poor use of taxpayer money. I would like to see the town purchase more, even though it's a little bit more money. I think it's wisely spent at a 10 or 20% increase. So that's my opinion on it.
Okay. All right. I was on the council when we had discussed this before to have the open space task force. And I was of the mindset then that I wanted to hear from the public first before we saw anything before the board. I understand, you know, what the family's trying to do as far as estate preparation and stuff, but that's really not, you know, my biggest concern. My biggest concern is spending the money on an easement where, you know, quite honestly, I don't know if it fits into what they're trying to accomplish as far as the easement, you know, process goes. If it was down at the Musquash, I'd say, well, like, you know, it makes sense to keep adding on to that space. I understand, you know, the concept of it, but I really do have a problem with spending the money at this point, just to spend the money. Some of the comments I've heard at the last meeting when we asked Mike about why we were spending the money, and he says, well, they were the only ones to come and ask us. Well, that's not a reason to spend money. So anyway, at this point, I'm not for spending the money on the easement. So, so we can take a vote. I think we pretty much have a consensus, but let's put it to a vote anyway. So all those in favor of...
Was there
Any more comments?
From the Conservation Commission.
How
Well,
about
that-
conservation and the public? Is
I
that-
don't know,
is
but
are
was
you-
there a motion?
Well, this was a continuation of the public hearing,
So that's
so
not-
I really don't have to take any more comment.
Okay.
We can if we want, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Is there a motion
There was a motion, yeah,
Was
from
there
the
a
last
motion?
meeting.
To vote?
No, I was just asking for a motion to vote.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and take more public comments, so that's fine. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I do think the property fits. I think if you look at the criteria from 2006, they are not going to be changing much to 2010. I think this is a really good purchase. We are connecting parcels. We are opening up more space in the north part of the town. It was all presented to you. If I can't convince you now, I'm not going to be able to convince you. It's a good buy for many, many reasons, and I'm just very sorry that you don't see it the same way. That's all I can say.
Can I ask, you're saying it's a connection,
Yes, it's connected to their property.
but what would be the total, if this purchase was made, what would be the total number of acres connected?
55?
It would amount to 52 contiguous acres.
And there's no other connection to another grouping of land?
Not this presently under easement, no, but there's a lot of open space up there to explore.
All right, but Deb, I asked this at the Open Space Task Force meeting. Wasn't one of the results of your survey that the 10-10 principle of having 10 acres within 10-minute walk of every, wasn't a very low priority? In fact, wasn't it indicated to be like 19
Does
out
that
of
mean
20?
it's a bad thing to do it?
Well,
anyway?
no, Deb, but
I mean, if it happens as part of a project, there's nothing wrong with it. We're not advertising that now as one of the profit.
no, I understand that, but if it's a low priority, why would we be adding to that low priority?
I said we're not even considering 10-10 with this parcel. We're considering its other attributes way higher. That's all.
May I just check for understanding? I just want to make sure, just want to reiterate what I heard in my mind. So what I heard all of us say is that easement, we're not crazy about easements. we'd really like to wait for the Open Space Task Force report, learn what the public wants, and maybe the task force reports come back and says, hey, we love easements, or maybe it comes back and it says, no, we should buy the land outright. I think mistakes some councils have made in the past is we rush to judgment and we make a vote and we make a decision when we didn't have all the information. And, you know, we're all guilty of that. We've all done it, and we've all sat on different boards and everything. I mean, I guess what I would say is, you know, if I'm understanding what everybody's saying correctly, I would probably pose a question to Mr. Merrill and say, okay, Mr. Merrill, what you've got is that we want to hear more information. Would he prefer just to wait, let us get that additional information, then once we have it, then vote?
John, I don't think it's a question about I think it's very clear that we don't want an easement right now. I think that's the question at hand. The property is a good property. I think if he's willing to sell the property outright, I think it's going to be a different question, a different answer. So I think that's what I'm hearing, a little bit differently than what you're hearing. I think that there's at least 3 councilors here, 1 councilor that feels very good about it, and then 3 that don't. So,
from my point of view, the last 2 purchases of the 2 proposals, we've offered to pay between 90 and 95% of the value of the property, and all we got was an easement of it. And I don't agree in spending 90 to 95% to get a piece of property with an easement on it.
Well,
Let me ask, we're paying that kind of money.
If the goal is to preserve the property from development, and you can accomplish that by spending 90 cents on the dollar as opposed to $1 of the dollar, then that to me seems to be a no-brainer in terms of what's the smart financial thing to do. But the larger question is, if across the state, if the best minds across the state in terms of planning, land planning, preservation, open space, have coalesced around these types of easements, why do we think that we're all of a sudden smarter than the statewide experts that we've decided that we have a better way? I mean, I don't understand where this is coming from. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think that, I don't know if there's something else afoot here, but it just doesn't, there's something doesn't smell right about this.
Well, I don't think anything is, I don't think that, hold on. I don't think there's anything afoot. I think that for years, and this is just I'm going to take my hat off for a second, so you've got the gavel. So for years, we've heard different spins on why we should buy open space. Okay, so if we're going to open the door, let's open the door. We'll step in. So it really, what it comes down to is for years, we've bought open space under the guise that it was going to save us money. We don't really know if it's going to save us money. So that's turned to, well, now it was for water protection or for some other protection. And that's fine. Those are all good things to protect. But for years, we've always asked all the departments in the town to reduce, to cut, to streamline, but we've never really done that to the Conservation Commission. So we put the task force in place to find out where we want to go with it.
Right.
And that's what we did. Now, I made it clear as one counselor that I didn't want to see anything, and I believe you and Tom were on the council when we did that, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And I think we decided back then just to make sure that we hold off, don't do anything. And, you know, here we are. So the only reason that I know of is that because of that, for me, I have a hard time going out and approving something when I don't have all the information. And the only reason we're here, hold on.
I'm saying the same thing.
The only reason we're here tonight was specifically because we were asked. So at this time, I'm not comfortable saying yes. So they're here.
Okay, so what I'm saying is we need to send the right message back, okay? I was on the original Open Space Task Force Committee. I was party to writing the formula about how to save money. I was also on the next one and wrote the formula showing how it didn't save money. I was also the one that led the charge against easements 2 years ago and saying that we need to look at this a different way, okay? What I'm saying here is we have a longtime resident of the community who's looking to make a decision. If we're going to say as a council, we're not interested in an easement, but are we saying, but we'll listen from an open space task force standpoint and an outright purchase? Because I just want to make sure he gets the right message. I don't want him to walk away from here saying, yeah, forget it, go someplace else. Or are we saying we're still interested in this piece of property if we're buying it, and if the report supports it? That's what I'm trying to get to the root of. Now, I'm not trying, vote however we're going to vote. That's what I'm trying to understand. Okay?
We asked, and there was, I think, at least a clear message that some of us on this council didn't believe that easements were appropriate vehicles for doing this. And basically, the response we got from, I think, Mr. Merrill and the Conservation Mission, well, you're just wrong. We're not interested in buying land. And again, Tom, you think there's something afoot here. I've spoken against this for a long time. I've said it never made economic sense to buy easements. And your claims regarding savings of money have just never been borne out by the numbers. And that's what I'm interested in. No problem buying land to conserve it. I don't want to be partners with people in the future who, according to the Conservation Commission, when they applied to the CIP for money, said these farmers were running into difficult times. I'm not suggesting that that's the case with you, Mr. Merrill, or your farm. But the point is, I don't want to be partners with you if we're buying land with taxpayer money. I have no problem if we purchase your land, giving you a long-time lease. We can lease property for years, for hundreds of years. Most land in Hawaii is long-term leases. We lease Guantanamo Bay from the Cuban government. We can do that. And we can do, basically, you can do what you want on the land, and it's a win for them, and it's a win for us. And we can charge him nothing but $1 in order to make it legally binding. But what we get always is just opposition. We get, you don't understand things. Well, frankly, Tom, I understand things. I understand them very well. I have a different point of view than you when it comes to the savings of open space. They've never materialized. No one has shown a dime in savings in this thing. And I don't even want to go into that argument. You want to have a purchase, I'm happy to accommodate you. Frankly, Mr. Merrill, I don't understand why there'd be opposition. You'd be getting more money. You're right. The land is worth more if we buy it outright than in an easement. I have no problem with that if it's an appropriate purchase. But I think the time has passed to just sit there and take and accept without looking at things that because some university study says easements are the way to go, that's the way to do it. The numbers have never worked. You've not shown the savings you claimed for years. And now we're supposed to take these experts as, face value and accept everything they say? I just don't. If we're going to conserve land, I want control. That's what I want. And that doesn't mean that we have to dictate things to you. We can have a lease. You can farm the land if you want. I got no problem with that. I think it gives us better control as far as maintenance going forward because, frankly, there has been a stewardship problem in the conservation lands here. There's been quite a problem in the inventory control in the lands and the conservation. Most people don't know where the lands are. Most people don't know what you can do on these lands. And that's a failure of this town. We own these properties, and we've just been acquiring them for the purpose of acquiring them. Most people don't use a lot of parts of these conservation properties because they don't have a knowledge of what they can do on them. And that's something that's got to change. So with all due respect, Tom, it isn't an there's no ulterior motive here. I've been very clear that I don't believe in easements. I disagree with some of the legal conclusions. I think there is an issue with bankruptcy. And frankly, I think it's time that we have a full plan going forward before we start purchasing things and spending taxpayer money. We shouldn't just be spending it because it's in the bank account.
Yeah, the contention that the only reason why open space is preserved is to save taxpayers' dollars, I think is just a failure to recognize what the original goals and the continuous goals are with open space preservation. But just to stay with that piece of it for a minute, the fact that our schools are seeing a declining enrollment, and the school department is now faced with reducing their budget, or at least taking the pressure off their past increasing budget, and the fact that we're not building schools anymore in this town, I think that to fail to recognize the connection between open space preservation and the slowdown in residential housing to a very desirable community, I think is just failing to grasp the obvious. But some of the other goals and reasons to preserve open space has to do with passive recreation. Has nothing to do with saving taxpayer money. The people in this community have expressed a large desire to have passive recreation options available to them, and much of that happens through the preservation of open space. Those folks who are gun enthusiasts and hunting enthusiasts use open space in order to do their hunting. And we know, we have scientific studies that says if we don't have contiguous open space, especially our large game migrate to much less populated areas of the state. It's been a long time, probably a decade, since I've seen a moose in this community. Not to say there aren't any more, but I don't see them anymore. And a lot of that has to do with expanded development. And it's not just open space, patches of open space. It has to be contiguous open space, so those large game, the deer and the moose, can travel those contiguous spaces because they won't stay in islands of open space. So that was one of the reasons why the open space goals were to try to connect as many of these parcels as possible to allow for these corridors for this large game to move. And the hunters won't have that large game anymore if we don't pay attention to that. We also remember that we have 85% of the folks in town that pull their drinking water from the ground. And if we don't preserve open space, then we put additional pressure on our water resources. If you've ever had to have a well redug or re-drilled, and the expense associated with that because your water went dry or because it became contaminated from development, then you know the value of preserving open space. And lastly, the reason that drew many of us to this community was the rural character and the nature of how the town looked and felt. And largely because there were large tracts of open space in this community long before anyone thought of preserving any of them. And as the pressures of development continued, and as the population went from 7,000 to 10,000 to 15,000 to 25,000, those opportunities for undeveloped open space have been gobbled up, as you would expect. The areas that are most developable are the dry uplands, and that is where we've asked the Conservation Commission and the Open Space Task Force to focus on areas to preserve in order to slow or to stop residential development as much as possible. Yes, we need to preserve wet spaces as well because there are animals and there are plants that are rare that need to be preserved in that as well as our surface water, which trickles down to our groundwater. So it's a very complex set of reasons why we do this and why we behave a certain way, and it is not all wrapped around one single objective that somebody may have an argument about. This should not be reduced to some simple yes or no. This is a rather complex issue, and it has to do with our community. It has to do with who we are and who we want to be. Or do we just want to be another zip code along Route I-93, or do we want to be someplace special?
Council.
Yep.
Thanks, Councilor Dolan, for your geology lesson. I find a few of the comments made tonight very offensive, no-brainer, and failure to grasp the obvious. First of all, I have a brain. Secondly, to state the obvious, people out here in the audience and people watching it on TV would probably state that if you spend $219,000 for a piece of paper versus $230,000 for a piece of land, and give you the rights to do whatever you want to do that with that land for $1, I think that's pretty realistic, and I think that takes a brain to try to figure out. So I find that those comments offensive. We're talking about open space, okay, and we're talking about purchasing open space. I believe in open space. I believe it's important for the town of Londonderry. I believe it's important to keep its rural aesthetics. And this is just a different way of doing it. So tonight you come forward with an order for a conservation easement purchase, and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about open space. We're not talking about geology of water and where it's going. We're talking about the purchase of a conservation easement. So if I could bring the council back to that question, that's really what we're talking about.
Okay, Tom.
Councilor Dolan indicated that the decrease in the school population has something to do with the conservation efforts. Well, I'd like to point out to Mr. Dolan that if you're going to make that calculus, I think you got to show your math, just like an 8th grade student would. Because the fact is, during the same period of time, we've added about 1,200 homes. I think Andre can verify that, to this town. And if you're going to make the argument that we would have had 2,000, then you better come up with the economics to show that. The fact is, the same argument can be made that open space never stopped a house from being built anywhere in this town. It just stopped it from being built in certain places in this town. One of your first large cash bonuses you gave out on an open space purchase, I think, was to Elmer Pease. And I've been on the planning board for a number of years, and he's been bringing projects to this town for years.
That was by town vote, Tom.
I understand, but the point is, if you're going to say we stopped houses from being built, the same argument can be made that all you did was put a lot of ammunition and money in his pocket so he could build somewhere else in this town.
All right, we're harnessing it in here.
So if I can just come back to, I just want to show a little kindness to Mr. Merrill and give him some direction.
I did.
So you know, I understand what we're saying. Are we saying that we're still interested if he wants to bring something to us in the future for outright purchase? Just trying to give the man a little idea of what we're thinking. I understand what we're saying tonight, just trying to show some kindness to the man.
I think I just did, yeah.
My preference would be that we task a group of people and some staff, and we ask people to weigh in on a survey. Why don't we hear from them what we want to do? And if it's to continue to purchase land in various, fine. That's what we should be doing. If he wants to, if he's under no impetus to sell, I have no problem looking at his land again. But I'm, you know, as long as I'm here, and I'll be clear on this, I don't believe in easements. I'm not purchasing an easement. Okay, as long as I have one vote. And so if you're interested in selling land to the town, I'd be happy to look at that.
Okay, Mr. Merrill, I just wanted to make sure you got an answer you can go back to your family with.
Tom had a comment.
Yeah, one of the reasons, by the way, Joe, I'm happy to give you that geology lesson anytime you want. But one of the reasons why we should be purchasing easements is because boards like this cannot be trusted. And I'll say it as a member of the board. Because when we begin to own property, the boards beyond us, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, will be of a different makeup, unless you're going to go for your 7th or 8th term. But the board's going to change. And the board, if the town owns the property outright, we can do anything, the board can do anything it wants with that property. It doesn't have to preserve it, can turn it into a strip mall, could turn it into a bowling alley, could turn it into a shooting range. It can do anything it wants with that property.
But it can do that to an easement.
No, it can't. An easement is preserved in perpetuity. It cannot change. It has to stay the same as that easement. I mean, that's one of the many advantages of going with the easement. Is not only is it cheaper, but it preserves the property the way that it was originally intended to be preserved. And if you have a group of rascals in your political government that want to do something crazy, they can't do it. And you know, and that's one of the reasons. You know, being a member of the board, I understand that the people on these boards change too quickly to be able to be trusted to do the right thing for the community over a long period of time. with the original goals that the community set up several years ago for this type of activity. And it makes more sense, although the community has the right to do that. They can elect whoever they want to these boards, but if we're going to do what we think is the right take the long-term picture, not take it in 1 or 2 or 3 year snippets, but the long-term picture is to preserve the community the way it was originally intended to be preserved. And the easement is the cheapest and the best way to do that without having to keep your fingers crossed that you get the right people on these boards elected every year, that they don't do some type of mischief with this land that they've acquired. And when you start acquiring large groups of land, guess what? The temptation to do something with that land grows and grows with the size or the amount of the land that has been acquired. And you know, it just creates an opportunity for something very odd to happen with large parts of the land that was originally intended to be preserved.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Dave. Dave, just wanted to ask you, if we were to purchase a lot, could we put it in the language of the title that it would be only used as conservation?
Well, any sale would be negotiated between the buyer and the seller with certain conditions.
Okay, so we can put that in the condition as a title, right?
So it's a possibility.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that was out there, too. Can we go for a vote here, or?
There was another question Lisa had.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Lisa Whittemore. I'm at 40 Griffin Road. I'd like to do some basic math. 15 minutes to Manchester, 15 minutes to Nashua, 20 minutes to Route 3 South. The main north-south route in our state goes through the center of our community, and we're 45 minutes outside of Boston. So anyone who doesn't understand that we have a limited window here to put property aside under easement for protection for the future generations of Londonderry is maybe not paying close attention to the economic realities. The other point that I'd like to make, and so, you know, I just want us to be very conscious that it is this town council right now that is in a position to do something for future generations. I'm an older resident here. If this land is protected for future hikers and kids on bikes, it's really not going to help me directly. But it will mean something to me that the community that I'm part of was foresighted enough to do this for people that we haven't met yet, maybe children haven't been born yet. And I would love to see this town council step up to that challenge and put that property aside in a productive way. The other point that I'd like to make is I moved here in my 20s, which we know couldn't have been that long ago. But my first school district meeting that I ever attended, a report was presented by a group called the Building Committee. And the chairman of the committee got up and presented the report, and they had a recommendation. And the school board said, "Oh, well, don't worry, we don't agree with them." I was stunned. And I approached people afterwards. I said, how do you get people to serve on committees if they're creating reports that you're ignoring? I'm an alternate on your open space task force. I have not had the opportunity to attend all of the meetings that have gone all year long, studying the issue of open space. Tremendous amount of resources and learning has been done by staff, by members on that task force. You have a task force report that's going to be presented in a matter of weeks, and I have to tell you, I'm extremely upset that any of you are going to consider taking a vote on this without even listening to the Open Space Task Force report.
With all due respect, this council, okay, we didn't say you need to come up to us tonight and present this.
Okay.
Okay? So let's get that straight first.
Okay.
Let's present facts with facts. They came forward, they want a decision tonight. Not next month, not the month after, okay? So if they want to come back in 2 months, maybe it's a different vote.
So are you telling me that that you as a town council are content to wait until the Open Space Task Force report has come forward?
That's what I said
and at
all
least
along.
bring this into the
I said
consideration?
that, as one counselor, I said that last week. And I
Okay.
said it back when we presented that task force. I wanted to hear everything first.
Okay.
That was me.
Is it possible that we can move forward on that basis, or is there a need for a very
That's up to
rapid vote?
Mr. Merrill.
Okay.
But as you indicated, you're as an alternate on it, then you should look at the history of it. We paid 90 to 95% of the fair market value of a parcel of land, and all we got was an easement. And
all
I
you
don't
got
think...
was an easement, but it's my understanding that those easements are providing recreation for members, for hundreds of members of this community.
There's no difference between that and owning the land outright.
Well, I
Except-
think that I respectfully have to agree with Councilor Dolan that in fact who is seated in front of the microphone makes a difference when it comes to making decisions on behalf of the community and the future of the community.
And what happens when the other person that's in the easement, what happens when they go out of business or something like that, and they're no longer maintaining the land?
How many times has that happened in this town?
I don't
Has
know.
that ever happened?
You know what? Are we supposed to assume that no farmer is going to go out of business in this town? Because that's not the information we got. You can go back and look. The beginning of this program was called the Orchard Preservation Program, and it was started because of the failing apple orchard industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can't have it both ways, Lisa. If the reason we're buying the land is to support them because they're in a business that's failing, then you have to have some consciousness that that might happen a few years from now. And all I'm trying to do is buy a piece of land. If they're going to preserve it, it's going to be preserved. If you're going to have it for open space, I just don't want to partner with somebody that's going to have possible difficulties in the future. Now, you and I can disagree on that, and Mr. Dolan and I can disagree with that. I don't believe in easements. I frankly have a little experience with property law, and I don't think it helps the town to be involved in these transactions. And partnering with other people that by definition are not in the best of economic health.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
I'll yield.
Okay, thank you.
If the town owns the property, doesn't that take it off the tax rolls?
Yeah, and what kind of money do we get on tax rolls for basically open land area? And
It's still a productive
it's nominal, and you
farm.
know that. So don't bring, that's just a canard you're bringing up here. The fact is, you know, it's
Not at all.
It absolutely is. It's either open land.
Not at all.
Really, man? Okay.
She's entitled to her opinion. So, John, you wanted to say something before we close this? Thank you, Lisa.
Good evening, John Curran, 6 Fay Lane. We touched on some of these issues last week in the Open Space Task Force, and I don't want to put my finger on the scale either way. You folks are up there to make this decision, but the survey that John Vogel got back was that the majority of citizens want to preserve open space. A question that we were trying to reconcile is the majority of citizens voted that they do not want to spend money on stewardship. When, in my line of work, when I go to court and I see the way the judge is going, oftentimes I'll tell my client we want to withdraw this motion. Rather than spend all the time tonight, I guess I would ask the board if they could ask the Merrills if they're willing to withdraw the request at this time. I think we know which way the vote's going to go, and I would like to at least preserve the ability for weeks or months down the road for the town to still have an opportunity, and perhaps it's a different opportunity, a long-term leaseback option, something in which a farm is maintained in the town, if that's the choice of you folks and the citizenry, or something else. I mean, there may be other options out there, but I think that right now everybody knows which way the vote would go, and I think these folks probably should make a decision right now whether they want that vote or not. And if I were advising them, I'd probably tell them to.
So I've been yielding to everybody.
I'm sorry?
When's the report coming out?
We went through the draft report last week. John Vogel's making additional changes, and we're going to go over what is hopefully the final report at the next month's meeting. So it would be this month's meeting, June meeting.
Okay.
So, and as I said, I'm not here to advocate which way you vote. I just think that when we lost the ability to purchase the property up at Max, and, you know, a lot of people were disappointed that other options weren't explored. And I would like to just encourage you to keep options open if that's possible without dictating which way you ought to go on it ultimately.
Okay, so
All right.
Right, so
I think Council Farrell has an option.
Mr. Merrill,
Yes.
if I was to ask the council to table this until after the Open Space Task Force report has been presented to the council, would you be willing to wait on this proposal we have in front of us versus it going to a vote right now?
What type of time frame is involved here?
So, Deb, do we have any idea when, do you have visibility into when that report will be available?
Me? No, not at all.
No, so, John, does anyone in the room have visibility into, will it be by the end of the summer? What would it be? Could you just give us some sort of
I think he
timeline?
said next month.
Well, they're going to
My
finalize, but when are we
understanding-
going to see it?
Oh,
My understanding is that we would be reviewing the final report this month, so we would probably have it to you by next month. So it would be a matter of weeks.
So by the 15th of August would be at the latest, which is, we only have 2 meetings during the summer, just so we can give Mr. Merrill a time frame.
That's my impression.
So, Mr. Merrill, I would be asking to table this until, if the council would agree, to table this until August 15th so that that report can be presented to us. We can either, then vote up or down. It may not change anybody's mind here on an easement. It'll also give you time to talk to your family about whether or not you want to withdraw and do it as a purchase.
You're asking me to make a very quick decision on something. I'm wondering if I could have a minute to discuss this with Mr. Michaels.
No, you can take all the time. We're not looking for a decision right now.
No, I thought you were asking me right now
No,
whether.
no.
Mr. Merrill, please,
no,
talk to Mr. Michaels. I mean, I'm only trying to help you here.
No.
We want to table it to give you the time.
Okay, we will go along with the tabling.
You would like me to ask for I'd like me to make a motion to table?
In discussing with Mr. Michaels the issue, we would accept a table.
So I'd like to move that we table this until August 15th, until we can have the Open Space Task Force report presented to us.
I'd like to second that.
Okay. Motion and a second. All those in favor of tabling this motion until the August 15th council meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative, 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Merrill.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Deb.
I would ask that under old business, we have our council goals coming up. Well, I'm sure that would be an invigorating conversation in which everyone here is extremely interested in. I would ask that if we could, I think people are here for some of the new business items, and if we could possibly move those maybe towards the end of the meeting, if that would be,
or maybe to the 20th.
or whatever works for the council.
I think that's fine. I'm fine moving it to the 20th. I think we'll probably have a little bit less to go through, hopefully, Dave, on the 20th?
Hope so.
Maybe? Okay, council? Sure.
Excuse me, I'll be right back.
Okay, so we're in consensus, so we're going to move that to the 20th. So, all right, so for new business, order 2011-08, relative to the licensing of junkyard pursuant to RSA 236, Murray's Auto Recycling. Can I get somebody to read that, please?
Just trying to get there.
I got it. Order 2011-08, an order relative to the licensing of a junkyard pursuant to RSA 236, first reading June 6, 2011. Whereas Edward Dudak Jr., who resides at 36 Stafford Lane, Bedford, New Hampshire, and is the owner of Murray's Auto Recycling, 55 Hall Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire, desires the license to continue operations of said business, and whereas Edward Dudak Jr. has complied with the requirements of RSA 236 and other conditions of operation as set forth by the Town Council, and whereas the Londonderry Town Council, acting as the governing body of the town, has such licensing authority, and with approval of the Londonderry Building Health Inspector, who has oversight authority, it appears that the public good so requires such license be granted. It is therefore ordered by the Londonderry Town Council that Edward Dudak Jr., doing business as Murray's Auto Recycling, be granted a license to operate an auto recycling facility with the conditions as set forth in the attached agreement. Is it necessary for me to read the attached?
No.
Okay.
So we have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Okay, how do we go about this?
I want to recognize Richard Canuel to make a brief presentation on all 4 licenses so the board can act
Mr. Canio,
After the,
would you be able to join us, sir?
Seeing how you're discussing Murray's Auto Recycling, I guess I'll address that one first. Again, the issue regarding hours of operation has been a contention a number of years every time license renewal comes before this council. I have had discussions with our town attorney continuously throughout this past year regarding that very issue. There's been continuous complaints filed from the one abutting property owner regarding late deliveries or deliveries after the hours of operation that were established as part of the license between the hours 8 and 5 p.m. There was concern during last year's licensing renewal, and we did get an opinion at the council's request from our town attorney if he felt that those late deliveries were considered operation of the junkyard. His opinion at that time was that any deliveries of junk vehicles to the yard after 5 p.m. was considered part of the operation and would be considered a violation if it did occur after 5 p.m. After monitoring that site for the past year and discussing that issue with our town attorney, his opinion and mine as well, and we concur, is somewhat different. If it's a matter of an employee simply delivering a vehicle after hours, driving the company truck behind the gate, again closing the gate and leaving in his personal vehicle, our town attorney agrees that that cannot be considered part of the operation of the junkyard, simply because it does not pose a public nuisance as listed in the statute. So again, because that differs from the opinion we got last year, I asked our town attorney to provide me something in writing, and I believe the council has that as part of their packet. And as I said, he does concur that there needs to be more activity than simply driving the company vehicle behind the gate and leaving in his personal vehicle if that occurs after 5 p.m. For that to be considered a violation. So at this point in time, aside from that issue, there's no outstanding issues or violations with that particular junkyard. And I have to say that Murray's, as well as our other 3 junkyards, over the past few years, they have made strides in meeting the best management practices that are established by the State Department of Environmental Services. So everyone's doing what they're required to do. So along with Murray's, unless there's anything particular on the other 3, I would recommend renewal of all of those licenses.
Okay, if you do me one favor, I'm going to have you sit over there for now.
Absolutely.
Just in case we have any other questions.
Chairman, I have a comment.
Yep.
And again, I'm new to this board. I just want to understand this, and maybe Dave, you can give some clarification. I mean, a few minutes ago, we heard from one of the abutters having a problem with taking a road and taking it off the maps, and we stopped everything and said, hey, you guys have to work it out. You know, the abutters are saying, I see people coming in and out of there at 5 p.m. They shouldn't. I don't, I know it's illegal, but I don't see why somebody has to deal with that. Those hours are 8 to 5. How you would have to deal with something after 5:02 or 5:01, gates being open, cars coming in and out. It's a business, okay? It's not a resident. Am I right? There's no residential there? Nobody's living on the property?
That's correct.
No, I'm saying on the property, the junkyard, the person doesn't live there.
No.
Oh, that's correct.
After 5 p.m., shut your gates and get off the property. It's that simple. I mean, I don't know why we have to get an attorney to define that. We have people across the street who don't want it to happen, and we should respect that, period. That's my opinion.
All right. At this point, we'll go to the public. Richard?
Richard Bolinski, 89 Hall Road. You know, I'm going to try to stay calm tonight. This has been going on for years. It's not just the neighbor across the street. I see deliveries at 6 o'clock at night. I see trucks parked out in the road. Anybody want to see a picture taken the first? I see this truck parked the wrong way on the town's property, the right-of-way. They gave Mr. Adams a hard time about it when he had a car out there for sale, and he was wrong. He shouldn't have, you have to have it going in the flow of with the flow of traffic. At the time this particular picture was taken, there was also one parked at the bridge. All right? The cars are over the, right now it doesn't look bad because you got all the foliage. I'll be honest with you, it looks fine. With the exception of the front gate. The front gate, when he's crushing cars, and he's been doing it more often because he's been busier, are substantially above the gate. State law states that you must have a fence of 6 feet at a minimum, and that the cars must be substantially screened. For years, there's been fencing on the west side that hasn't been continued, that was supposed to be continued, going back 10 years ago. Right now, not a problem. When the leaves are gone, you see the cars. I don't want to speak about what's going on inside. I don't go inside. All right? You can't have cars parked out there. The other thing is this is a grandfathered use. I believe when I read the report, and Richard can correct me if I'm wrong, that you cited him once this year for working outside the hours. I think that was in your report.
That did not have to do with working outside of the hours.
Okay.
He was offloading equipment in the front parking area when he was not
Okay,
supposed
which is another thing that can't be done. I don't know what you got to do to stop this. I don't live across the street from it. I live about a half mile away, but it is a residential area. And it needs to be treated as a residential area. When the town took them to court years ago, back in '99, I think, the judge actually did a walk of the road and said that it doesn't fit. Well, it has a right to be there under certain conditions. And while over the years it has gotten better with the screening and such, much of which I believe is because Mr. Adams and myself continually came back, because the screening wasn't done until about 5 years after it was requested. If we don't keep coming back, it's not gonna get any better. Somehow this town has to enforce the hours of operation. Quite frankly, any judge, any lawyer, and who's the law firm that we have working on this? Is this Bot Mayer?
Yes, Upton Hatfield.
Okay, yeah, Bot Mayer. How could anybody in their right mind say that delivering salvage vehicles after the hours of operation is not part of business when it's a salvage operation? That's just foolishness.
Well, really, what the opinion did say, Richard, was it was not so much that. It was more of, like, a personal vehicle wouldn't be considered.
No, and I agree with that. He can go in there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and work on his paperwork if he wants. I see tow trucks coming in. A week ago, I saw the two of them coming, one right behind the other one with vehicles on, 3 or 4 vehicles. It was like 6:30 at night going into the yard. I don't see it as much as Mr. Adams. He lives across the street, but I see it occasionally, probably half a dozen times a year that I see it. The trucks are always parked on the side of the road. It's not a parking spot. The parking lot has never had an approval. I've been asking for probably 10 years to see the approval because it was just done. All right? He is in a residential zone. He has stuff he has to do, which is different than the others because he's in a residential zone. It's grandfathered. It's grandfathered, meaning that the only business that can be there is the salvage business. And for years, I've been bringing to this board, and in November, I handed Dave Karen a list of businesses that are registered at that address with the state of New Hampshire, and conveniently, they disappeared. The lists disappear and nothing happens. There's a wood pellet company. There's a couple of real estate companies. Principal office, 55 Hall Road. Can't be. That's a violation of grandfathering. The only thing that could be done there is auto salvage. Nothing's been done about it for years. You wonder why I keep coming back? I'm not saying that Rich isn't doing a good job there for what he sees, the environmental. I don't know what's going on inside. But when I have to come back year after year after year, hand the stuff to different boards, hand it to Dave Karen, why isn't it looked at? This, it takes me 5 minutes to find this. It's on the state website. Just go to the business directory. all right? One could be a holding company for his property, but I know I looked up and he has properties in other towns that are under this, so that's not a holding company, that's a real estate company. Or at least they did when I looked a year ago. Some, I think, in Pittsfield and some in Bedford. So what is, the cars that are going in there, since there are other businesses registered there, are they really for the junkyard? We don't know that, do we? I would imagine most of them are. Enforce it, that's all. He's got a right to be there under the right conditions. Stop the parking out on the road. It'd be nice if someday the parking lot had an approval, which it doesn't, and I brought that up 6 months, probably a week after it got paved. How did it get paved? When there's never been a site plan done on it, the town didn't want to do a site. Actually, I was told by a town employee, they were told not to ask too many questions. Okay? Let's put it together here. This isn't difficult. All right? I got involved in this many years ago because I thought what was being done to Mr. Adams was wrong, and it is wrong. He has to live with it to a point. But let's start getting it together. I'm going to hand you the picture. This was on June 1st. All right? They gave, Frank gave him a hard time, Mr. Adams, about parking the wrong way. This thing shouldn't be parked on the road to begin with, or in the town's right-of-way. It's used year-round. Why? We had the same problem up at Buderus, and that got taken care of. But yet this goes on, and that's in a business zone. And this goes on and on and on. The cars are over the fence. It has to be substantially screened. If he needs a higher gate, his big main gate, he has to put a higher gate. It's the way it is. Really isn't bad now. Everything's treed. But once the leaves are gone, which is most of the year, it's not the prettiest sight in the world to see. Is it better than it was many years ago? Absolutely. All right? And the contention that, Mr. Adams has brought him to court, the town brought him to court twice, and it's the town who won both times. So this thing about Mr. Adams, this and this, it isn't. He was just an intervener because he lived next door. He didn't proceed. He didn't take them to court. The town did. So, I'd like to know if somebody's going to look into this stuff, or it's just going to continue to go on and on and on. I'm going to give you the pictures. I'll give you the...
Hold on. Tom's got a question for you.
Maybe I didn't understand. Did either you or Mr. Adams make a complaint with the inspector's office?
About what it's...
About any violations you're saying there?
Oh, this year, I'll be honest with you, I haven't. It's a waste of time. You just heard, we can't verify it, we can't this. No, you can't verify it. Rich can't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He wants to have a life. The violations are done after town business hours. So how do you verify it? The couple of times he was brought to court is when Mr. Adams actually called the police department, and they came down and cited it. And as far as working after hours, I was at the court hearing in Derry, it was probably 3-4 years ago, with the judge. They were in doing catalytic converters behind the fence. The gate was making a lot of noise. And their own worker said, yeah, we're doing catalytic converters. And he says, that's operations. You can't do it after the hours. Just look it up. It's in the town of Derry's court records.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I sat in the ZBA last couple of years, and one of the things that we used to talk about as an alternate member, one of the things we used to talk about is enforcement. Mr. Cano can't be everywhere, as we just talked about. He has a very, very large area of land. We ask citizens, as we see right here, to try to do that type of enforcement when we see violations. I think we need to take these violations very seriously if they are, in fact, true. We have a citizen here who's presenting them, and we need to look into them because this is the only way we can do enforcement, by citizens that are concerned, that see violations, come forward and have pictures, have dates, have information. Otherwise, not just these type of businesses, but other businesses, as we see, will run rampant. So I appreciate you being out there for us.
I'll give you these.
On the picture you're bringing us, what time was that taken?
I don't know, sometime during the day. The date is 6/1/11. It's not. I'm not concerned with the business hours. That was during business hours. It wasn't after hours.
That's all right. Excuse me. So Dave, I sent you an email the other day in response to the attorney's feedback. Were you able to get any information back from him, or was it too close?
No, I confirm with Richard that if it's the attorney's position that if an employee drives a vehicle, opens a gate, puts it in, parks it after hours, not operations, if they start unloading the vehicles, that is a part of operations. Is that accurate, Richard? That's correct. In your discussion with town council?
Okay, so we're pretty clear with that then.
Right.
Okay. One of the concerns that I had was, it's not so much when a vehicle comes and goes like that. I mean, people are entitled to go to their place of work and, you know, as long as it's not a nuisance of after-hours stuff. But when it comes down to, you know, vehicles actually being unloaded after 5 o'clock, I do have a problem with that, because there are stated hours, and they should be followed. You know, to your point, Richard, we really, you know, as you stated, it's very hard and very difficult to put Richard, you know, he can't be all places at once, and he also does have a life after work. So you still really do need to follow up with pictures. I know your frustration over the years. I've witnessed it firsthand. I've seen it even before I was on the council. So I do understand your frustration.
And I'd like to address the pictures, because for many years, and there should be some CDs with hundreds of pictures in the file that I gave Frank Holsworth when he was in Richard's position. Here's the problem with the pictures. You say get pictures. The next council says we don't believe pictures. We write lists of times when these violations happen. The next council says, well, we don't care. You make the list up. You either got to start believing the citizens or not believe them. You know, you got to do something. It's ridiculous. It's been going on for years and years and years. It's like I've been asking for close to 10 years. Where is the site plan approval for the parking lot? I would like one of you 5 councilors to go to the file and show me a signed site plan for when that parking lot was constructed. Good luck. You're not going to find it because there's never been a hearing on it. It was just paved. Nothing was ever done. All right? It's not built to town specs.
Okay, so it's very easy. We can ask, is there a site plan approval for that parking lot?
When it was built.
That. Right?
We do not have an approved site plan for the pavement of that parking lot.
Okay. So when somebody violates something like that, do we ask them to take it off? How does that work?
You want to handle that, Richard?
Yeah.
Staff?
First of all, the issues that Mr. Belinsky is bringing up, and with all respect to him, I can certainly sympathize with his concerns living adjacent, you know, to a junkyard. Those issues really do not have any bearing on Mr. Dudek's ability to operate a junkyard under the licensing statute. If it's a matter of a site plan that's required, that's an enforcement matter. If it's an issue of him operating other businesses there other than the junkyard, that's an enforcement matter. Those issues have no bearing whatsoever on whether he should be licensed to operate a junkyard or not. So just want to, you know,
Well, for clarity,
keep that in mind.
what Councilor Green asked was specifically, because there wasn't a site plan approval, we haven't taken any action. And the question I think what he's asking is, why not?
This was well before Richard was in his position.
Yeah, but we have it now. Let's take the appropriate actions to...
And
I'll take a look.
I kind of agree with what he just said, but then again, I don't. To be able to run your junkyard, you have to be in compliance with all zoning, all town requirements, and all state requirements for a junkyard under, I think it's 236. All right? So if he's not in compliance with zoning, and he's got more than one business running a grandfathered use, you can't do that. That's a violation of zoning. So he's not in compliance. He may be in compliance with the requirements of the state 236, but not our zoning. A lot of this would have gone away if former councils and the code enforcement and all that at the time before Richard had just done what was asked, and they didn't.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
So you gave us pages from the Secretary of State's website,
Mhm.
which indicates multiple corporations, I think, have a legal address at 55 Hall Road. Are you saying that that's a violation of his junkyard license?
it's a violation of zoning, which is part of the thing, one of the things he has to meet, because it's a grandfathered use, and a grandfathered use can only continue in its present use, cannot be changed to anything else, and must not lapse for more than a year. Otherwise, the grandfathering goes away.
Okay, but you can have, you can create a corporation and just have a legal name as a mailing address. They may not be operating a business.
And that's true. But how do you know that's not what's happening?
I don't, but let me.
That's what I'm saying.
Neither do I.
But if he has multiple businesses listed there, is that a violation?
No, it's not a violation just for listing that as his business address. He would have to actually conduct business at that site other than his junkyard operation.
Okay, but see, this is how we twist.
Yeah, I have no verification of that.
I understand it may be a twist, but it may be the rule. But now, let me ask you, the picture of the truck, let me ask Richard there. Does that have to be Mr. Dudek's truck to be a violation, or is it?
That's a good question.
It's a question I have.
Off the cuff, I would say if that vehicle is part of his junkyard operation, then, yeah, that could be considered a violation, of course.
Forgive me, because this is probably a bad analogy, but every Thanksgiving, Walmart, the day after Thanksgiving, Walmart opens, and hundreds of people go wait outside before the store opens. Okay? They're not part of the store, but they're there. So, is that a violation of Walmart zoning if they can't have people on their property? I don't know. So my question is this: do the people that are complaining have to prove that that's his truck or his employee's truck?
Yes, in some way, I would think so. Yes.
Because if a third-party tow truck guy picks up a junk car at 4:30 and it takes him 45 minutes to get to 55 Hall Road, he's past 5 o'clock. Is that Mr. Dudek's problem, or is it third party?
It's Mr. Dudek's flatbeds and tow trucks.
Oh, okay.
He owns
if it's
them.
his flatbed, okay, but if it's not his flatbed,
right?
Would you say it's his problem?
If it's not his flatbed and they unload it outside, there actually is a phone number for, I think it's...
No, I'm just saying they show up, he's shut down, he's gone, and they show up and they leave the truck there. Is that a problem?
Discussing that with our town attorney, he does not feel that that's a violation.
Okay.
But that's not the case of the picture.
Right, but if it's Mr. Dudek's truck,
I think that's regardless, whether it's Mr. Dudek's truck or
doesn't matter.
Someone else's. Yeah.
When you're bringing in salvage vehicles with the owner's own trucks, and it's after the hours, and the attorney says that's not part of business, I'd love to know where he got his law degree, because that's what the business is. So if that's not business, what is business? If he can't bring in vehicles, he doesn't have a business.
I guess my question...
It's real cut and dry. The gates are supposed to be closed at 5.
If it's after 5 o'clock and he's bringing, the truck arrives and then he opens the gate and he comes in.
That's a violation.
Would that be a violation?
That's not a violation.
That is a violation. The judge...
He's got to do something to the car, pull it off the thing?
Yeah, as I've said, over the years, this has been a matter of contention. And
what's the latest variation of the legal opinion?
I've discussed it. Yeah, I've discussed this issue ongoing with our town attorney. And delivering those vehicles after hours, if someone just simply pulls the truck in, whether they're towing a junk vehicle or not, parks behind the gate, and then leaves in their personal vehicle.
So conducting business would be considered taking it off and crushing it.
Yeah, or just removing it from the truck. If he's actually physically removing it from the vehicle, then that's part of the junkyard operation. If he's simply parking the truck there, like I say, whether it's loaded or not, there's not enough of a violation.
Let me ask you. Sure. Can you, from whatever angle that you're not trespassing, take a picture of them crushing a truck after 5 o'clock?
Well, I don't live close enough to
well,
it. I'm a half mile away.
You had the picture.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
Whoever did it for you.
You could. Oh, I took that, but that's out in the road.
Okay. But you see what he's saying. He's saying you can.
And that's ridiculous,
well,
because if you go back...
I realize that, but Richard, the problem is we're stuck with what somebody told us.
Well, get an attorney that's got a brain, because he told me I was in violation of having a motorhome, and I wasn't.
Richard, we could get jurors that find everybody guilty, too,
Yeah, Richard, he's been told by a judge that if you open the gate for business after your hours by a judge who's higher than an attorney, that he's in violation. He was cited for that.
Okay.
That's business. He can go in and out. If Ed wants to go in and out of his office and do paperwork, he can do that 24/7.
So there's a
All he
written,
wants.
there's a written court order that says that. If the door's
It
open.
was taken to court because Frank
No, no, no.
Holsworth
What I
cited them.
asked is there a written court order that says that? From a judge? You said the judge did it. They record everything.
Judge said he was in violation of the town's hours of operation by opening the gate to do business.
Said
That's
it-
in Derry,
said
Derry
it-
District Court.
It's in writing?
I would imagine that when they found that he was guilty, that they put it in writing. I don't do the writing for the court. I was sitting there in the courtroom.
Is that what is there?
Frank was,
is there a writing
Frank
that
was
says that?
actually still on.
I would have to
his
look to the
position.
files to see what it says specifically.
Can we get
there.
that information?
Because he fined him, then he suspended the fine.
See,
If he didn't violate it for, I think it was 6 months at the time.
You guys have done a lot of work in this thing. I don't understand, frankly, if there's a written order like that from a judge, that's, I'm sure that's still a copy at Derry District Court. Why don't you get it and bring it here?
Why do I have to do everything for the town?
Well,
I've been doing it for 10 years.
I understand, but, you know, you're the one, in a sense, you're the plaintiff here, you're gonna make your case.
With that said, we're going to get, Dave is going,
So
Dave, you're
basically, the
going
hours
to.
of operation mean nothing.
Richard,
No, I'm just saying.
please.
Nothing. We're
Guys,
going round and around again.
Point of order, guys,
And
okay?
they
I'm not
mean
using my
nothing.
gavel tonight.
Use it, I don't care.
I don't want to use it, okay?
Right.
So can you just please let me talk? Dave, can you get us a copy of that, if it exists, from the Derry District Court on the findings back when this went to court?
We can give you a copy of all the violations that were founded and the court orders or the court decisions. For the
Perfect.
council review, sure.
We can do that. Why don't we make it really simple? Why don't we just ask Ed Dudek? He should know if he had a violation.
If I could, just make a point for clarification here. Based on that court order, these conditions were established as part of this license. If there were any other issues from that court order, I'm sure they would have been as part of those conditions. As long as Mr. Dudek is meeting these conditions, and we have opinion from our town attorney that he is, then there is no reason to deny his license.
Okay. Just
It's pretty reasonable.
speak to that.
Go ahead, Tom.
This, what,
Okay, Joe.
what I have here are the documents that list the various business identifications for the address. Now, I'm sure there are many in the room that can attest to observing the auto recycling business. Do we have anybody in the room that has observed a realty company operating at that address, or a wood pellet company operating at that address? Has anyone observed that activity?
How do you know the people walking in and out are there for the auto recycling? I don't.
There is a contention has been made that there are other businesses operating there. I guess I'm asking, has anyone
They're
observed that
registered
activity?
there, they're not allowed to be. It's as simple
So
as
if they
that.
haven't, if they're not operating there, then I guess that's not an issue. At least we haven't had anyone
So what you're
observe it
saying is
being
anybody
operated.
can run a business in this town, just don't have people walk out with a product. So you can run a business anywhere.
Well, if
You guys
I
really
guess
sneaky.
if somebody has observation of that business being run, then I guess that would be a zoning issue, and there is a remedy for a violation of a zoning ordinance.
Well,
It's certainly not part of a junkyard license, but the remedy is elsewhere.
Agreed. All right, yeah, I'm sorry, Joe,
So
go ahead.
let's use a phrase, grasp the obvious. We have number 5, the applicant's hours of operation shall be limited to Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The applicant is allowed to transact business and perform junkyard operations only during that time. Again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if you're doing anything after 5 p.m. in that business, that you are transacting business and performing junkyard operations. No matter what you're doing, junkyard operations is paperwork. So I think it's clear. I think Robert said that this was from a judge. It's up to the interpretation now of what we see, based on Bart's recommendation, I understand, that this is a court order. Okay, and again, I think it's pretty simply stated there.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to a vote. We've heard enough testimony.
Hold on, we have Mr. Adams, yeah. We'll
Gerard Adams, 54 Hall Road. I have to ask a question. I know that last year Mr. Karen talked to the town attorney, and the town attorney told Mr. Karen that deliveries after 5 p.m. were considered business, and that was done. He made the statement during a town council meeting. Now, am I hearing that that's not true? Mr. Canwell, I'm asking you, is that, when did this change? It's nice to know that if I had taken Mr. Dudek to court, based on what I heard Mr. Karen tell me last year, that I would have been out thousands of dollars again?
The opinion has changed because, as I told the council earlier, I've been monitoring that site over the past year a little more closely, just to observe what has occurred at that site. It was our town attorney's understanding during last year's licensing renewal, and the reason why we got the opinion from him is that those deliveries involved actual unloading or loading of vehicles, and not necessarily just simply driving the company truck inside the gate. Discussing that with our town attorney with more detail and explaining what the actual operation was and what was occurring there, his opinion is that if all the driver is doing is simply bringing the company vehicle inside the gate, closing the gate, and leaving in his personal vehicle, that is not part of the operation of the junkyard.
When did that opinion
May 17th, 2011.
Thanks for telling me then. Are you a little deficient in letting me know about this? Because I was going under the assumption of what Mr. Karen told me last year.
So, Mr. Adams, if you would allow, I would just like to ask a check for understanding question. So in the hearing last year, Mr. Dudek came here with his attorney. What the situation they described was, if my recollection is correct, is that one of my trucks is stuck on 93. He can't get here until 5:30. There were neighbors here who said that, you know, park your truck in my driveway or something. He was here with his attorney, and that what he wanted to be able to do was have an exception to the policy, not a regular policy. So what I mean by that is, if under extenuating circumstances, a truck arrives, pull it in, leave it behind the gate, deal with it tomorrow morning when they open up.
Exactly.
Is that what our attorney is saying? I mean, is it an exception rule, that this is the rarity, and that this isn't a Monday through Friday operation of things keep showing up all night long?
Exactly.
I want to make sure I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so, bear with me, Mr. Adams. Mr. Dudek, could you please come up here? Just bear with me a moment.
Bearing.
Ed?
Yes.
What I described, is that what you're intending?
What happens is my trucks are out on the road, just like anybody else. They're coming home at the end of the day. Sometimes they come back at 4:30, sometimes they come back at 5, sometimes they come back at 6. But they're coming back at the end of the day. They drive the truck in, they open the gate, they drive the truck in the gate, they close the gate, they leave. It happens within a minute. They don't unload the truck, they don't do anything. They shut the truck off, they lock the gate, and they go home.
Does this
They just
happen-
bring the truck back at the end of the day.
Does this happen every day, that they come in late?
A lot, yes.
Okay. Richard?
Yes.
So,
Hold on, Jerry, hold on.
he's saying it's regular operation, that that's going to happen every day. What you're saying is that our attorney is saying it's a rule of exception.
Every
you
day?
know, and you know what?
Every day?
I'm not the lawyer up here. I'm just trying to get to an answer. We got one of those over there, but but you know, I'm just trying to get to an answer, which is, you know, what is it?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to be. I'm just
Also,
trying to get an
when I
answer.
went to court with Frank years ago, because we were doing something in the garage after 5, we had the gate closed. We thought it was okay, but we found out from the court it wasn't, so we don't do that anymore. But at that time, the judge asked the prosecutor, what about the trucks coming in after 5? And I had this on a CD. I could bring it in. I have it on a CD. And the Adamses were there at that hearing, so was Mr. Belinsky. And the prosecutor said to the judge, I don't care what time his truck's getting after 5. I have it on a CD from the courtroom.
Okay. This is all really interesting information.
And they were there. That's what's funny. They were all there at that court hearing. And it's funny how they forget all that, but I have it on a CD.
Okay. Richard, now in light of this gathering of facts, do we need to ask Matt a different question?
I don't think so. It's not
Okay.
a matter of how often it occurs, it's what occurs. As he said, and, you know, I agree with him, if a driver is simply driving that truck into the gate, closing and leaving, then that is not part of Mr. Dudek's operation.
So I'm checking for understanding, okay? I want to make sure I clearly understand. So what you're interpreting Matt Surge's information to the council as is that it's okay if it happens every day.
Yep, he did not give any specifics on whether it happens on occasion or it happens daily. It's not when it happens, it's what happens.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jerry. I was just trying to get my arms around what it is.
Well, to further explain, I know Mr. Green, Mr. Frieda are new on these councils, on this town council, but you could probably ask Mr. Canawell regarding the number of complaints based on what I heard Mr. Karen tell us, based in terms of what he heard from the town attorney last year, how many complaints we have issued regarding these late deliveries. And it is not a matter of 5 or 10 minutes. This has been as late as 10 p.m. Okay?
When did that happen?
Well, you can ask Richard, okay? He's got it
10
on.
p.m.?
Yes.
Okay.
Really? I'll look at my payroll records. I don't ever recall paying any of my employees after 10 o'clock, ever.
Point of order, I'm sorry, Jerry.
Mr. Dudek.
Mr. Dudek.
I mean, you know, I have to listen to lies now?
Let's keep it civil, okay? Let's just keep it civil.
All right, so Mr. Dudek.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question, okay?
Yes.
What's the latest one comes back on average? 7?
7.
Right?
The latest, yeah, on average. Sometimes 6:30, 6 o'clock, but on average, 7 o'clock at the most.
See, here's the issue, okay? So I asked Dave this question earlier today. Does any other yard in town have hours of operations?
Yeah.
They don't. All right, there's one on Litchfield Road now for sale. The Hall one is for sale. That's in a residential neighborhood. So,
But John,
I understand. I'm just listening to the information.
I mean, I go to and from Boston every day. I mean, Council Frieda goes to and from Cambridge. If you're in Boston and you know you have to be there by 5 o'clock, you leave earlier. If you have a pickup that's not 2 hours, you know, if it's scheduled at 3 o'clock, you don't do it till the next day. So, you know, when you have hours of operations, and that's part of the question here, I mean, you didn't state the hours of operations. I mean, I just don't understand why it's such a, we have people, you know, homeowners here that we represent, we also represent the business, but we represent homeowners here, and we're just continuing to allow this. It just doesn't make sense to me.
We're not allowed, clearly, Joe, we're not allowing anything, okay? That's not within our purview. But that's why I asked the question if it's an exception, okay? So what we've learned is it's not, okay? But we don't hold anyone else to the same standard on any other business in town. And I understand, and there are other businesses in residential areas. So let's just gather all the information, and then we can make a decision.
Tom?
Yeah, if I'm looking at the legal advice right now, and although legal advice is privileged, I can excerpt a little bit from here, and that our attorney says that he doesn't believe that just the mere appearance of a company vehicle with or without cargo constitutes operating after hours. The act of returning the work vehicle to the job site would probably not be seen as operating the business, since the employee must return the work vehicle and retrieve his or her own personal vehicle. And he talks about his last year complaints where the employee was not only returning the work vehicle but also unloading the cargo, and that's the distinction that our attorney makes, is if vehicles return to the job site after hours, it's not considered running the business unless you do something to that vehicle, like unload it from the truck or begin to process the junk, if that's the right term, the salvage piece. So the distinction that the attorney makes is that in last year's testimony there was concern about trucks returning after hours and then processing the salvage the salvage stuff, and that construed doing business. If the vehicle comes back, regardless of how often or what time of the business, and it just comes and parks itself at the site, and the person doesn't do anything, doesn't process the material, doesn't unload the truck, then our legal advice is that that doesn't constitute conducting business, which would be a violation of the hours. You can't conduct business outside those hours. So I think that's the legal advice we've been presented with. I know you obviously don't agree with that, but that's what our legal minds, and that's what. And I'm not sure I've heard testimony yet that the vehicles coming back are actually processed. In addition to coming back late, that they're actually processing the material. I don't know if you're making that contention, or if anyone else is making that contention. I haven't heard that yet. That would be a different issue. That would be, according to our lawyer's definition, that would be conducting business after hours.
Anytime that gate is open, that's business in my eyes.
I guess I'm confused. Why is it if he has deliveries coming in during the day with the wrecks, say one on the flatbed and one in tow, which is pretty much what happens all the time when a truck comes in, why is it that that's business during the day, but after 5 o'clock, if a truck comes in, all of a sudden it's no longer business? That's a part of the business. It's coming in, it's going to create revenue. Maybe it's a wreck, maybe it's one that's going to be sold because they sell cars. This is business. It's coming in after hours. And if it's before 5 o'clock, then okay, yeah, that's doing business. But you're saying if it comes in at 10 o'clock at night, that's not business. It's coming in. They're not having a picnic over there, a family picnic. It's part of the business.
Ma'am, I'll use common sense on this, okay? So that is common sense. It's part of the business.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And one more thing, I mean, in terms of the hours, why is it stated in his licensing permit 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on Saturdays? I'm assuming it's to give us a break. We live right across the street from there. And if the trucks are rolling in at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, where's our time for our quiet? The business is there 6 days a week.
I live on Mammoth Road. I don't get that. 9:55 at night, I'm sure Joe can reconcile the Harley that goes up and down.
Absolutely. Drag races.
I know, but do you live across the street from a booming junkyard business?
I do not.
Okay.
The only thing I can say to you, does it make common sense? No, but somebody had to draw a line, and the judge apparently and the attorneys here have driven. They drew a line at 5 o'clock, and they.
But why did they draw that line?
That I don't know, but they drew that line, and now they're saying that as long as employees return after 5, if they return after 5 o'clock and just enter, the gate opens and they just park the car and shut it down and leave, they're saying that's not conducting business. Basically at 5 o'clock, the only way you can conduct business is by unloading cargo off the truck. That's what they're telling us.
Bringing in cars and whatever is, to me, it's conducting business. I think that you're trying to justify it.
No, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just telling you what they've given us as the determining factor here.
What would you think about this? These were some of the things that we reported. Mr. Canwell, you can probably tell them that we're not lying. That was part of the violations. The trucks, oftentimes when I'm coming home after 5 o'clock, one of the Murray's flatbeds will pass me going the other way. So they've, in essence, left the junkyard after 5, and then they come in later on at night with another delivery. That's not business? I think it is business.
Dave, I have a question. Number 5, could we possibly, and I don't know if this is possible, but can we further define it and just ask that 7 o'clock, I mean, just throw a number, I don't know what it is, that we further define it as and no one should be returning back from a delivery after 7 or something. Can we add, so if this is the big problem here in this whole picture, if we added that as a definition, I would feel a little bit better about going forward with this, because at least we've addressed some of the concerns that have been stated here. I really feel, I would feel bad tonight if I just ignored these residents. I mean, I was voted in to be a voice of these people, and for me to just ignore the concerns they have would not make me feel very good. So what I'm trying to do is at least get a happy medium, continue for you to have your business, and at the same time try to...
Talking about a minute. They
What's
act like
that?
they act like they're there for hours.
No,
They're
I
there
think you
for a
stated
minute.
7 p.m., right?
It's a minute.
Well, you said...
It's no different than you bringing your car home and pulling in your driveway, turning it off, and walking into your house. It's no different. It's a gas engine. It's not even diesel. Doesn't make that much noise. My neighbor next door's son's Mustang made way more noise than my truck. But they never complained about that.
I think
It's
a
a
little
minute.
different.
We're talking about a
It's
minute
a gate
here.
opening. It's a gate opening. It's a flatbed coming in. It's a little
The
different.
gate doesn't make any noise. The gate doesn't make any noise. The lock doesn't make any noise. I don't understand what the problem is here. It's a minute.
So is that possible, Dave?
Well, my only concern is that we received through Richard from legal counsel that he does not consider simply driving a vehicle through a gate, closing the gate, turning the vehicle off and leaving as part of operations.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where his definition would change, or his opinion would change on that, whether it was 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. We'd have to check with legal counsel, but my sense it probably wouldn't. Then again, I'd need to check with him.
Okay.
I have one more question. If you're going to do that, how are you going to enforce that? You can't enforce it now. It's been a problem ever since we've been there. Even if you change it, and I appreciate the effort that you're trying to make, I do. But where's the enforcement? That's been the whole problem.
Well, here's the thing. I think the definition of this whole hours of operation is the problem. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is to try to say, okay, hours of operations have been determined by our legal counsel, 8 to 5 p.m., okay? But then if we further define it by saying return deliveries, or whatever you want to call it, cannot be done after 7 p.m., that will kind of at least represent your concerns a little bit. And so that if we put it into this exceptions, then we can enforce that part. Right now, we don't have anything that's defined that way. Because again, hours of operations have not been defined as coming into the opening up the gates, the trucks coming in. It's not been defined that way. So I was trying to define it a little bit more.
Before you speak, could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Okay. We have a legal opinion. The inspector has to follow it. Okay. You may disagree with it. I might disagree with it. We all might sit there out in the audience and say, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's the opinion that the town is going to follow. And Richard, you can shake your head, but the problem is, that's what we have to do, okay? Wait, let me finish, okay? That we have to do that doesn't mean you have to do that. It doesn't mean Mr. Dudek has to do that, okay? There's a court. Go ask the judge to interpret his own ruling, okay? And this goes to both of you. You can keep coming here and fighting this every year, or the two of you can see if you can work out something. Or maybe Mr. Adams goes to court and asks the judge to clarify his earlier ruling. And maybe he says, hey, I don't know what this guy over in Londonderry is saying, but at 5 o'clock, the door's locked, and that's it. You're out of business. Nobody can bring in nothing. Or he may say, Mr. Adams, you know what? If he's just bringing his truck in, as long as he isn't pulling cargo over it, that's the answer. Or the two of you can come to some agreement, okay? Because all a judge is going to give you, and every judge that I've ever been in front of says, you want a trial, you can't agree, fine. You'll get a decision. One of you isn't going to like it. So we can have this episode every year, or you can see if you can fix it. Maybe you're not going to get everything you want, and you're probably not going to get everything you want, but maybe you can work out something that you can all live with and stop this. Or go to court and have the judge in Derry say, this is what I meant. I don't care what the Londonderry lawyer says. I don't care what the one 3 years ago said. This is what I said. This is what I mean. With all due respect, you're spinning your wheels here. You're asking us to do something I don't think we can do. We're stuck with an opinion here.
Okay,
In one part of me, it makes sense. Another part of me, it doesn't make a lot of common sense.
No, I appreciate everything you said, and I really do. I just thought we could come here for some relief.
You know, I wish
know.
it could give it to you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like we can, because we're going to be told that we can't do this, that our decision has to be based on, is there a violation? And it doesn't appear to be one presented to us, okay? So you can either do that or spend a bunch of money on equipment and, you know, photograph them 24/7 and bring it in here. And like Richard said, maybe the next council says, hey, we ain't believing that either. Why don't you see what a judge says? Maybe they give you determination. Maybe he says, yeah, you got a point. At 5 o'clock, they should be lights out, everything off. Or maybe Mr. Dudek's right. Hey, his employees can return it, and you'll have to live with that. But maybe there's a way to work something out between the two of you, so you two don't have to come back here.
Yeah, I don't like coming here either.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, but, you know, look at, simple guy.
Yeah,
all right?
I understand.
Give me a break, okay? That's
Yeah.
what I'm looking for.
Good luck to you, sir.
Yeah.
What about a suggestion? I think I brought this up before. If it's so innocuous in the owner's eyes, why doesn't the flatbed go to his house, and then in the morning he can bring it back? If it's so innocuous, his neighbors won't mind. That, you know?
Yeah.
Have it go someplace else. Leave us alone.
One other comment.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about us being where we were supposed to be. He was here when he heard Mr. Karen mention last year that the town attorney said it was illegal to do what he was doing in deliveries, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But he continued to do it. And we had no way of proving other than pictures, and then we were told by a former counsel, well, pictures don't mean anything unless they're dated, and they can be changed. So, you know, where do we stand? We don't get one consensus here from.
Right. And you know what? What we say, what the town attorney says, what the inspector said, all we can do is guess. Get a judge to say, this is what it is. He can do this, he can't do that.
Yeah.
And then he's got an enforcement ability. When it's vague like that, you're never going to get an answer. You're never going to get any kind of relief.
Can I, Mr., are you done? Sorry.
Well, Councilor Dolan had one thing he wanted to bring up. He might.
What I wanted to mention is with all due respect, this doesn't have to do with council not listening or not wanting to help citizens as they come forward. But we do have to operate within the legal framework that is established for us, not only by the courts, but by our legal representation into the courts. One thing that has been done from a historical perspective, we talked about code enforcement, and you're right, it's very difficult to do the enforcement, especially since we've eliminated our code enforcement officer position. I was on the council when we first added that position to the council, and as my memory serves me, one of the major driving forces in adding that position to the council was this issue around junkyard code enforcement. And that was one of the ways the council reached out to try to help the community and try to establish fact from opinion, and to make sure that the rules were, the junkyard owners were playing by the rules. And by most people's assessment, the operation as it was 10 years ago compared to what it is now is dramatically different. The place looks better. It's operating under a stricter set of rules. The shielding, both from a vegetation standpoint and from the berm, is better. So incrementally, the code enforcement, a lot of input from you folks, input from the neighbors, rulings by the court, enforcement actions by the town, acquiescence by the owner in some cases, and agreements we've moved or transcended down a road where we're in a better place than we were 10 years ago. We're not perfect, I mean, if there's a lesson to be learned here, junkyards and residential neighborhoods don't mix. I think we've come to that conclusion over the years, and that's why in our current zoning rules they don't mix. We don't put them together. We're not allowed to put them together. But unfortunately, this predates all that wisdom and all those rules, and we find ourselves in this situation now where there's a lot of give and take, and hopefully we're not regressing. Hopefully we're still making progress, although not as fast as you would like to see, but it is incremental, and it appears to be getting a little bit better. If, for example, if last year there were vehicles after hours arriving and being processed, and if this year the incremental changes, they're arriving after hours and not being processed, that's one small step for junkyard kind, I guess. So that's my historical perspective.
One thing you may not have remembered, the judge in this case did bring up the fact that this was an unusual situation where this is located in a residential area, so it doesn't operate under the same rules, really.
Very true.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Huh?
I'm going to try to be quick. Al Baldessal, 41 Hall Road. I was sitting home, just got home a while ago, minding my business, eating dinner, and watching town council like every other citizen in Londonderry. But first of all, I want to thank the code enforcement officer because they have done a good job over the last few years. The council has done a good job on this. Ed Dudek has taken that extra step. I'm a butter. I can sit in my living room, in my recliner, look out my glass door and see every truck that goes in there, in that lot. I know when trucks go in. You know, those trucks are a lot quieter compared to the many other trucks that go down that road, 5:30 all day long, okay, that go from Mammoth Road all the way down to Highland Ave. That's not the issue. If you take a look at what's going on in the past few years here, many of us neighbors came up here and said we have no issues with Mr. Dudek. We're glad there's no more rocks. Before it got tired, the rocks were all out in the main road, shooting up on cars and everything else. We're all happy that you stepped in and done this to us. The issue is not here. You have the same two every year, year after year, and I respect them. That junkyard out of Freedom here was there way before any of those houses were there. That junkyard was there before I bought my house. Who am I to move into that neighborhood and say, Mr. Dudek, you don't belong here? Okay, that's not right. And I'm glad that hopefully you do the right thing. Give the man his license, because I go in the mobile station sometimes by my house or Tedeschi's. Sometimes they're closed, just about a minute before they close. They don't push me out the door. Tedeschi's or mobile on where I've got sometime the kid need milk before. They don't rush me out the door. They take care of me and say, if it might be a minute or 2 minutes after. Okay, this is wrong what we're doing here on, worrying about trucks. Many of us offered him to park his trucks in our yard, okay, because I'm right next door to him. I told him he could park his truck if there's an issue, because that's a business paying taxes. He used to donate to Old Home Day. He does a lot for the community, and yet every year after year after year, we beat him up, and I should say just him. No other business go through this. So I thank you, and I hope you do the right thing tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Would you entertain a motion?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that's going to cover all the junkyards. So I'm not going to read all the orders. I'm just going to refer to the orders. So in the interest of time, motion to approve Order 2011-08, licensing of Murray's. Order with all attachments and everything as presented in our folders. Order 2011-09, that's the licensing of S&S Metals. Order 2011-10, this one is for 211 Rockingham Road, the Londonderry Salvage. Order 2011-11 for the Hill, that's the Hill Salvage Business at 7 Litchfield Road. Make a motion that we adopt and approve all these licenses.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Only if there's anybody who wants to speak on it. If nobody wants.
Is there anybody in the audience that has any discussion they'd like to add to the licensings that we're about to put to a vote? Seeing none, okay, bring it back to the council. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay. All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative. Motion carries 5-0. Approval of 2011-08, 09, 10, and 11. Okay. Order number 2011-12.
While I'm on a roll. Expenditure of Reclamation Trust Funds for Drop-Off Center Improvements, reading 6/6/2011. Adopt tonight, 6/6/2011. Whereas the 2003 voters established a Reclamation Trust Fund to fund the disposal of motor vehicle waste and recycling and reclamation of other waste, and whereas the improvements are necessary to the drop-off center to allow for the proper recycling and reclamation of waste, and whereas the 2011 Town Council authorized a contract for the improvements to the drop-off center. Now, therefore, be it ordered by the Town Council that the Town Treasurer is hereby ordered to expend $176,000 and $176,086.27 from the Reclamation Trust Fund for concrete, electrical, site work, and engineering expenses. So moved.
Motion?
Second?
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion from the council?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Chair votes affirmative.
Okay, next. You ready for the next one?
Go for it.
Let's get some stuff done here.
Do it.
Order 2011-13, the expenditure of maintenance trust funds for various projects, reading 6/6/2011, adopted 6/6/2011. Whereas the...
Point of order?
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend we suspend reading of the order and just note the total expenditure of $32,607.88.
So moved.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any discussion with the council?
None.
I don't have any. Yeah, these look pretty straightforward. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative, 5-0. Motion carries. All right. Resolution 2011-10, adopting rules of order for the town council.
And next one I have is...
14.
No.
Next one we have is the... Next one.
This one.
We have the
Oh, I'm
amendment
sorry,
to
my
the
bad.
Minority
Yeah.
Women in Business Enterprises.
Yep, my bad. I was looking at the motion that I had left. So, okay. You're
Okay.
right.
Has everybody read this one? Or you want, I can
Motion
read
to
it.
waive the reading of ordinance 2011-04.
Second.
Ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Point of discussion?
Yep.
Dave, there's no requirement for a public hearing for this ordinance?
Yeah, the ordinance recommends that the first read and a public hearing on June 20th, 2011.
Okay. So I would therefore ask that the motion be amended to include a public hearing for June 20th.
Okay.
For ordinance 2011-04?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so, first reading is tonight, and public hearing and adoption for June 20th, 2011.
Okay.
We'll waive reading. Motion to waive reading.
Second. Okay. Motion by John, seconded by Tom Farrell, Tom Frieda. Okay, all those in favor of moving ordinance 2011-04 to June 20th, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Chair votes affirmative. Okay, ordinance 2011-05, relative to the amendment of the zoning ordinance regarding the planned unit development process. This is looking to move this also to a public hearing on June 20th.
Just for clarification, Tim reminded me that within our zoning ordinance, any proposed amendments generated outside of the planning board process gets transferred to the planning board. They go through their public hearing process, come in returns a recommendation. So if the council does approve the first read tonight, we would send it to the planning board. They go through their process, they return with a recommendation to the council.
Okay.
You know, and also in our legal packet that was sent to us, it was relatively strongly recommended that we don't go down this path. May suggest a different path in light of the fact that it has to go back to the planning board anyway. Maybe what we could do is we know this isn't going to affect the Woodmont project. Maybe what we can do is as we did with the performance overlay districts a few years ago, is ask the planning board to work through their process with regards to the Woodmont piece, work with staff, find what worked, what didn't work, and what may or may not need to be adjusted. Ask for them to make a recommendation, or even in a joint meeting with us, to come back and say, okay, here's what we've learned, here's what we think might need to be changed, and we can, you know, do this in a thorough sort of way, versus sending it back to the planning board, who's really busy right now, and expecting them to have time to send something back to us that's well thought out and has gone through the processes. That's just one idea.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I've been on this board for a number of years, and this is probably the strongest legal wording that I've seen in terms of advice from our attorney. As Councilor Farrell mentioned, to not go down this path. It's fraught with all kinds of problems and hidden dangers, as our attorney points out. I would recommend that we table this permanently, and I'm fine with Councilor Farrell's recommendation that the planning board at some point down the road comes back and reports back to us about their first intersection with a PUD and how it went, and any recommendations they might have going forward. But I don't think, having considered this and also now seeing the rather strongly worded legal advice, that this is not something that I think we should pursue. I don't think we should delay it and take it up later. I think we should permanently table it, and we should ask the planning board, once they've gained more experience with the PUD itself that's currently being administered, to come back and recommend to the council any changes that they might think of, any additions, subtractions, rewording, or whatever. But I don't think this is a considered piece of legislation that we ought to put forth at this point.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, I didn't interpret the legal advice to be close to that. I think we're mixing up the ordinance and the Woodmont project. I think this is an ordinance that we're trying to adjust to do a couple things. First of all, getting this board more involved. Since I've been part of this board, I've been quite involved with the Woodmont project on a weekly basis. And I think that having the elected body of the town, the ones who get the phone calls and get the emails, as I have been for quite some time now, and trying to address them on a regular basis. I think not having that in our purview is actually something that's doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Also, the zoning in town has always been a part of the town council's authority. Master plans as well have been part of the elected board.
Excuse me, master plan is a planning board document. It is not part of the town council's authority.
Okay, and oversight, I think, is the most important piece to really look at here, trying to install those measurements into this ordinance. Thank you.
Yep, Joe's done. Can I speak? Yeah.
I'm not in favor of tabling it. I'd like to hear what the planning board has to say, since I guess it's normally referred back there. I'm just kind of struck by the, back in July of last year, there was a 1 acre zoning change that required town council approval. So I'm just not sure why we need to have a 1 acre approved by the town council, and not that Woodmont would be, but potentially a 600 acre project is not done by the elected body. or the governing body. So I think it at least deserves consideration. The statute, I think, designated 3 possible boards to make the final decision: planning, zoning, or the Board of Selectmen or Town Council. So I think the legislature clearly outlined, something that's being contemplated here. Whether it's a good thing or not, I don't know, but I'm willing to hear what the planning board has to say and to go through that process. So that's why I don't think we should table it.
I've been torn on this since back when we first passed this. I think that,
Let's take a second here. Let's separate this, okay? There's 2 different things going on here. One is, our attorney told us we cannot affect the Woodmont project. It will go under the ordinance as written.
can I finish my discussion first?
Let's just keep that in mind.
Truth be told, this has nothing to do with Woodmont.
Exactly, thank you.
That wasn't the intention, at least not to my knowledge. So, can I talk? Is that okay?
Excuse me?
Can I talk? I was in the middle of talking.
We're going to do this? Go ahead. I mean, want my permission?
All I'm saying is, it just amazes me sometimes how there always seems to be this inference that because we have a different opinion, there must be something going on.
Oh, so it's we and us?
Well, that's what it seems like.
I'm only repeating what you're saying.
Okay.
There's a we and
I'm
an us.
glad we can do that. That's fine.
I didn't say it. I didn't really know that it was a we and an us. I thought there was a board.
There is a board. Okay, so now that we have the fun and games out of the way, I think that the PUD is obviously a very big document. There is a lot to it. There's a lot of unknowns to it. I realize that as one person on this board, on this wonderful board, that I am just one vote on it. I think that ultimately I really didn't understand, back when we passed this thing, why would we give up having an approval process at the end of it? Meaning that when we get down to the end of the day, it's a checks and balance system is what I thought it was. And I was kind of surprised that we basically gave it up. So, I mean, I'd be interested in hearing what the planning board has to say, and also more people from the public. And that, in all honesty, that's what I thought this was all about. So, I'm not quite sure. I mean, obviously, I know this has nothing to do with Woodbine, and I've never come out one way or the other against it, for it. In all actuality, I'm for it. I think there's a lot of good things it's going to bring to the town. But, as far as going forward, I'm just kind of concerned that, the council as the elected body should at least have some input into it. But anyway.
I want to respectfully disagree, Sean. I think that it has everything to do with Woodmont. I mean, the only reason this is before us is because of Woodmont and because of some of the political pressure that's now being brought to bear. Otherwise, I mean, it would be some wild coincidence that we would be bringing up a pretty dramatic change that our lawyer is telling us to be very careful about this. This is fraught with danger. That we would even be considering this if it wasn't for what's going on with Woodmont right now.
So am I being naive in saying that's what this is?
Well, I think that we just need to recognize that the political issues that are beginning to arise from the Woodmont project are what's driving this initiative. And the curious thing is that the Woodmont horse is out of the barn, as they say. I mean, this cannot affect Woodmont. It doesn't affect Woodmont. So if there is some thought that this is some political remedy for what's going on with Woodmont, it's not. It's not going to change anything. It can't impact it. So I guess I'm not really sure why we would take this action in the face of the Woodmont activity that's going on with the planning board and the developers. So that I think in the community there's a lot of emotion around this issue, and for us to enact a law based on that emotion that really can't affect the outcome of that issue that's creating that emotion is puzzling to me. And what this really, the impact of what this would really do is introduce a political process into something that should be as apolitical as possible. It's not completely apolitical, but one of the reasons why we have the planning board and the way that it's created and the way that we run it is that these aren't elected people. They're somewhat pulled back from the elective process, and therefore should be making decisions based on what they believe is the right thing, not what they believe is the politically expedient thing, which is what political bodies will do from time to time. And so we want to try to keep the planning process free of politics, as our lawyer recommends we do, so that, because we know whenever we have a process like this, there are going to be aggrieved parties on either side of every issue. So whichever side of the issue you rally to, you're going to have opposition. Whether you're on this side, those folks are opposed. Whether you're on this side, those folks are opposed. So there's no clear, well, that's the right thing to do. I think that we ought to try to stand back, let this process was begun before most of us were on the board. We can't, there's not that much we can do about it at this point from a political standpoint that wouldn't result in probably costing the community a lot of money in lawsuits. So I think we just ought to step back. We ought to let the process continue on its way, stay connected with the planning board, get lessons learned, and see what we need to do down the road. Because I think at this point it's premature. It introduces that political process into something that's I think we'll end up misleading the community to think that, oh, we've taken some steps with our PUD. Now we can do something different with the Woodmont project.
Mr. Chairman, can I make clarification, Mr. Chairman, since I was the one who requested this consideration?
Sure.
First of all, for the record, I want to make sure that everybody out there in TV land and in the audience understands that this has absolutely nothing to do with Woodmont whatsoever, okay? And it has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with anything underhanded or anything fishy or anything crazy or any of the other implications that have been made. This has to do with, let me finish.
Nobody said anything about anything fishy.
This has to do with.
Nobody said anything about underhanded.
Mr. Chairman, can I continue?
Stop. No.
Can I continue?
I'm not going to let that stay on the record. Stop.
So what I'd like to do is I wanted to
You're playing games here.
Let people
all right?
understand that this has to do with the other.
If you want to issue an apology, you can do that now, but stop.
May I continue, Mr. Chairman?
That was a little out of order.
Okay. So what I'm trying to do is there's 9 other parcels of land out here in Londonderry that can qualify for planned unit development, PUD, and what I'm asking the consideration of the council is to adjust the PUD to again bring the purview of zoning back into the arena that it always has been. For many, many years, and to put a essence of oversight, and that's all I'm trying to accomplish.
With all due respect, our attorney told us we didn't give up anything. He told us we acted appropriately. He also writes to us there are hidden dangers lurking in the procedurals set forth in the proposed ordinance. What I'm suggesting is the same thing we did with the POD, which turned out the way we wanted it to turn out in the long run. Just do the work and then make a decision. And the planning board has that responsibility. That's all.
Councilor Farrell, he is the one who wrote this update. How would he, is that correct, Dave?
I'm reading his legal piece here in front of me.
But what he's saying is that the staff, did staff write it or did the attorney?
No, staff
wrote it?
That's correct.
He blessed it? Okay.
Yeah,
and then he issued the opinion.
Yeah, and the things that have been highlighted is, it has to do with Woodmont, and we understand that.
those are the words being used.
Okay. Nothing to do with this ordinance, huh? Woodmont has nothing to do with this ordinance.
But the argument being made, with all due respect, is that we face Woodmont. That's what's brought this about. From an economic development standpoint, we need to try to be smart about this and say, okay, what we don't want to do is throw another roadblock up. Maybe we should change it back to the town council, but we have a process going on. Let's get educated. They spend months doing it, right?
Yeah.
And then bring it to us, and we got to make a decision in one night, and they've got all the information. Let's get educated.
And no one suggested, well, at least, I'm in agreement with that, John.
Okay.
But frankly, when every proposal is met with table it for eternity, that's not exactly working with things either, Some of us have different views than other councilors. And all I'm saying, John.
I didn't ask to table it.
No, I know. Another councilor. Okay. And the implication from that is that if we don't go along with tabling it, we're somehow, destroying the town.
No,
I don't agree with that.
Let's try to keep the innuendo out,
Okay,
okay?
fine.
Please.
Then let's deal with that. I'm fine with letting the planning board go. I understand, and have said from the beginning, this wouldn't affect Woodmont, so I'm quite aware of that. And I didn't
why it's
need
being brought
Bob
up.
Mayer's opinion to know that. So I'm happy to do it, but let's also realize something here. The legislature gave 3 bodies the potential to make the final decision. Planning board, zoning board, board of selectmen, or town council.
Right.
Legislative.
In many towns, planning boards are elected. I'm not aware if zoning boards can be elected. So there's a political process potentially in lots of these scenarios.
Sure.
Okay, so then let's not just suggest that there's no political process in the way we chose to do it here either. Let's just send it to the planning board, follow the procedure. I'm in agreement with that. I've been the one, frankly, on the planning board saying, let's get moving on Woodmont. Let's get some definitive, proposals here so people can see that. And let's hear people's comments and let's start going.
I don't think we disagree. I never mentioned politics until it was brought into it.
Okay.
Okay? Very, very simply. Okay? We've been down this path before with the Performance Overlay District. We know what the blueprint is. Tell them to fix it.
I understand that, but let's just look at some of the logic here too. Back in July, a 1-acre parcel came before the town council for a zoning change. So if you're going to look at it logically, you can't say, oh, we can have the planning board decide this 600-acre thing, and for 1 acre, we got to bring it to the town council. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm happy in looking at it, and I'm not wedded to one thing or the other.
And I understand everything you said. The legislative body of that time voted the way they did.
Yeah.
And they knew everything.
Mr. Chairman,
Regardless of
point
what
of
they
order.
tell you. Would you please stop
Hold on,
interrupting me?
Joe. Joe, hold on. You'll get your turn.
Okay? They knew everything, and we know that now, because we know everything from the standpoint of what went on with this. We've been briefed.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I agree with you. We should send it back to the planning board, and let's move from there.
Yeah.
Joe?
Okay. I just don't understand why Woodmont's being brought up in this thing. So can we just get off of that?
I'll just say this,
It
because
has nothing to do with Woodmont.
I really didn't want this to become a pissing contest, and unfortunately it kind of did, and I really regret the fact that John and I just got into it because, we're up here as a board, we're supposed to be working together and doing the best we can, and that wasn't my intent. And what I'm trying to say is that I think what Tom, and I'm not trying to speak for Tom Dolan, but I think what his point was is it just seems, in his eyes, it seems like it was politically motivated.
And I clarified.
And you did, and that's fine, and we're past that.
Yep.
But all I'm trying to say is that I think that he's worried that it's going to create this it might take its persona of its own by passing this now, if we did that, or whatever, that it might come down the road, say that, there'll be a faction of people on this side and a faction of people on that side, and really that's what he's worried about happening. But that's Tom's opinion, and I think, if I paraphrase...
No, you did. I think this is, let me say it a different way. What's before us, I think, is bad legislation. It's bad law. And I don't think we should entertain it. And I don't think we should just delay it and entertain it later. I think that if we have some concerns as a body that the PUD needs some adjustments, or might need some adjustments, then we go ask the planning board to consider that, and say that, gee, you know, as you guys gain more experience using this, and they're all novices with this, as you gain more experience, help us understand what needs to be changed. We'll turn that into some legislation that's good legislation, and we'll pass it. But, you know, to take this what's before us I don't think is good law. I think it's as the attorney said, there are hidden dangers lurking in this procedure, and you know that in and of itself means take it off the table and go write something different. Write a different law. Write different legislation that is more sound and is less emotional and has some historical perspective that we don't yet have and that we need to continue to gain through the planning process. And we have a very experienced board that is in the process of gaining that experience and is accumulating that knowledge, and hopefully they can get with our staff and perhaps with our attorney at some point down the road, craft a piece of legislation, a local law that we can pass that will be more robust than what we have in front of us. I think this is premature, and it's not good law. No shot, Dave, at our staff, because they just were doing what they were asked to do. I don't think the apple's not ready to be picked here, and you know it's not ripe. So I think that we have the planning board chair and some staff, some of his staff in the audience. I think we should just ask them, or have them consider what we're talking about, and bring us back a recommendation or some legal language that they think that they think would work. I don't think this will work. I just think we've got something here to pass something, and it's not ready, and I don't like the language. Our attorney doesn't like the language, and it sets us up for potential legal ramifications that maybe a better piece of legislation wouldn't.
Okay, so Tom has just voiced his. Do we have any other counselor questions, or Joe? Anything?
Nope.
Tom?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that if you would poll the council as to how they feel about voting to move this forward?
Why would we do that without a vote?
Because if it looks like it's going to be moved forward, I'm going to object under the charter.
I'm in favor of giving it to the planning board and,
in its current state, in its current ordinance language?
I'd be, as my one opinion, I would be more, honestly, when we got this and saw that letter, I can't help but wonder, he really doesn't say what the hidden dangers are. I mean, there's a common sense point, and I'm not a lawyer. I look at that and I say, well, okay, I need to know a little bit more of what he means by that. It kind of scares me because, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I understand Joe's point and Tom's point. I really get what everybody's saying, but I guess what I'm trying to wrap my arms around is, for years I've always heard that we always put up roadblocks in Londonderry, and I do have concerns that we might be doing that. But I also understand that, we are the elected body and we should have some say, and I know, like you're saying, we didn't give anything up, but I don't know. I mean,
I didn't say that. Our attorney said it.
All right, the attorney said that, and I don't know if I disagree. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that because, I was one that voted for this, and after the fact, and I realized it, I'm like, well, did I just sign away my rights for something? And I had some buyer's remorse after it, to be honest with you. But again, I don't know what. At the end of the day, I don't know what I was remorsing about because the process hasn't even taken place yet. So.
I don't know what we do procedurally. I have no idea. What I would like all of you to entertain is that by consensus, we direct the chairman of the planning board to move on lists like they did with the POD and start investigating it and making it part of their process as they're going forward to bring back to us what they're learning as they're doing this and what they would do differently. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think I got that. Good.
What would be the problem if we send this to them, because they could amend every word of it?
Starts a 90-day clock, and they don't have the time right now with Woodmont.
With all the stuff going on, I think that this is kind of tough to do.
So,
they're trying to move forward with Woodmont. This isn't going to affect Woodmont. So maybe, honestly, are we putting too much on the planning board right now to do that?
No.
Joe?
I mean, I definitely think we need
It's
to
your
get stuff
legislation. I
done.
want your opinion on it too.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, I just have a hard time every time we bring up Bart's opinions, because I think he's looking at it in the thought process of Woodmont. And you got to really separate this. You got to understand what we're trying to accomplish, what I at least envisioned for this, and I kept repeating it.
And understanding what you just said, I think that I'm getting consensus from everybody, maybe Tom not, but I think everybody pretty much understands that it's not nobody's saying it's affecting Woodmont. I think we've all agreed on that. But
So-
what we're saying right now is that is this the right time to be saddling the planning board with something else that really isn't going to affect Woodmont? And we have no other big plans right now in the works. So maybe we can buy some time and
In addition, does the planning board have enough experience with the PUD yet to be able to, even if they had their calendar was open for the next 90 days, do they have enough experience with it? And maybe we should ask the planning board that's here, do they have enough experience with the PUD to cut on that to review that legislation and make coherent recommendations for changes, tweaks, rewrites, or whatever? Or do they need to gain more experience with it to understand what the proper method forward is? Or like I said before, is this a period where this isn't ripe? I mean, we don't have enough knowledge. We haven't given the fruit enough time to ripen before we're ready to pick it and say, let's change the law. Well, we just got our toe in the water. Do we know enough to change the laws?
Right.
And will we know that much more in 90 days? Does the planning board know enough now that they can start rewriting this and bring us back a different piece of legislation in 90 days? I think it's too premature. And if I say table it forever, all right, table it for a year. I mean, table it until they're ready till they have enough experience. That was my intent. Table it until they have enough experience and gain enough knowledge with the current PUD to understand whether it's working great, not working so good at all, or somewhere in between, and what changes might need to be made. I mean, this is pretty dramatic changes, and it's maybe this is the way we'll eventually go. But how do we know that? What's the hurry? What's the rush? Why do we want to put an immature piece of legislation out there and try to gavel it?
And to be honest with you, just to pick up on that, I sat here a couple of years ago and I got my ass handed to me for voting on that trash thing. All right, and to this day, I still think it was a good idea. But the one thing that I will always regret is the fact that we just pushed it through so fast. And I kind of feel, at the end of the day, I feel that's what we're trying to do on this.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm not trying to push this
I know you
vote. Now, what I would like to say, though, is that maybe some of the issues that we've been having with this current PUD, I mean, I don't want to speak for the developer, but the developer in many of the meetings and many of the Saturdays that I've been there, and I think somebody in the audience can attest to the fact that I'm there every week without fail. And I think some of the things that we've been tripping over is that the developer's been asking and asking and asking and asking for direction. And I think one of the problems that has occurred is that we have a board dealing with something that they have never dealt with before.
Yeah,
Again, with the zoning.
But here's the distinction.
We're talking about zoning,
We're
Sean.
not.
Sean, zoning.
Okay,
That's what
but
I'm
we're
talking
not. This is still the same.
Yeah.
We're not a land use regulation board.
I understand that.
We can't trip over that.
Right, I understand that. So in staying with history, staying with the things that we've always had in our purview, zoning, I think that would be where we could help with the decision process. And that's why this ordinance has come about through that process, to say, hey, maybe if we combine the efforts of an elected body with people that know a lot about land use, I think we can come up with the right mix of changes to zoning. So that was my thought process on it.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, but, you know, our attorney specifically told us not to get involved. I mean, we were all sat in the same room, we heard what he said. Now, maybe he's wrong, but, you know, but that's what he told us.
That's not what I heard.
Well, okay.
Dave, I have a question. If it's tabled, and if it's tabled tonight, and 6 months from now, we've come to the decision that it's the best piece of legislation ever, can we then reintroduce it or not?
Well, I think you can now, because currently the council does not have any rules of procedure. So.
After tonight, we will.
Well, maybe not.
Actually, we can get to that after June 20th, probably.
Okay.
But, you know, so right now, you don't have any rules of procedure, so everything's by consensus. Determinations are made by the chair, and the entire council can overrule the chair, similar to a moderator at town meeting.
Can I ask that we have a second reading in 6:20? To put it off a little bit further? Would that make sense? To get people talking about it?
That would be a consensus of the council to do that.
I mean, what are we trying to accomplish by putting it off? Having more people talk about it, have more people think about it?
Well, I think one of the things is to have some input from the planning board.
Well, that's why I thought we were sending it to the planning board.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, that's what we're trying to
But
accomplish.
we're not really sending it to the planning board, because this document right here is asking for us to approve that as written on the 20th. So that's not what we're sending to the planning board.
But we have a hearing on the 20th, so we'll
Right.
have people come on the 20th.
What if you put it off until the first meeting in October? And they can either, if they get a chance, they can look at it or not, or maybe we've looked at it more and.
Maybe the master plan will be done by then, we'll know what the heck we're doing.
But, yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm trying to consider everything here as just my one vote, okay? The way I look at it is, it really is all uncharted for us right now. We got a big project in front of us. That's gonna be the litmus test, okay? We're not doing anything right now, by changing anything in this ordinance right now, we're not doing anything except changing the process going forward. And while I understand and appreciate what you're trying to do, I think that I'm understanding the other side of it too, which is we really should just kind of let it play out and let's see how it goes, because you know I don't want to be that blocking mechanism, because I've heard it from everybody how Londonderry is awful. You know, you guys do whatever you can to block stuff, and I just don't want to do that. And I really don't. I don't feel like we should be that impetus. We should be, you know, be proactive. But I think, you know, we have a planning board that has, what, 9 people? 7 people? 9 people? 7 people and 2 alternates?
Probably 50 or 60 years worth of experience collectively.
So, I mean, we get a lot of people there that are doing that job. You get the zoning board doing a job.
Are we aware, if I may, are we aware of any, and Andre's here, are we aware of any of those large tracts of lands that are imminently under the consideration for a second PUD?
No, not today.
All right, so if that imminent threat doesn't exist, then I guess the question is, what's the hurry?
That's kind of where I'm going with it.
So could I suggest a second reading possibly on August 15th, this town council meeting? I think going to September is a little bit far. I just don't want it to be too far in our memory. If we can bring it back a little bit, you know, I think by that time we would have a presentation by Woodmont anyway. They're talking about a month out. So I think that the process of that 7 or 8 month or 9 month investigation of what the townspeople wanted and Mike's changes that he's made will be presented by that point. And that's really the whole essence of the master plan, is getting that PUD in. The PUD master plan is presented. So I think by August, I think we can kind of pick it up again. Once Woodmont is done, that piece of it would be completed by the planning board already. But I just don't want to go all the way to September, if that's okay with the board.
I don't think we can legally do that.
As far as what?
Second reading?
Yeah, I believe.
We haven't had a first reading yet, have we?
Yeah, I believe the requirement is that to consider this legislation, it has to go to the planning board for a minimum of 90 days, and that takes us to September.
I guess I would suggest if you wanted to discuss it again, you would continue your first read to that date. understanding that the first time it's adopted by the council on the first read, then it goes to the planning board for their legal process, then it comes back with their recommendation for your public hearing.
See, that's what I'm confused about, like, everybody's saying they want more time. Oh, you're saying the clock, right, Council Farrell? You're saying the clock, the 90-day clock.
Right.
Okay, so we don't, that's the point, we don't want to start the 90-day clock, so by having this read again in August, you just said it was okay to do that, right, Dave?
If the council votes to continue the
That's
first
legal.
read to August 15th,
So
there's nothing
that,
that...
then it'll be August and then 3 months
He's
after.
asking for a second reading in August.
Well, whatever the wording would be, just to get it to,
The only thing you're sure of, you can't have a public hearing until you get the recommendations back from the planning
Right.
board.
Right.
Second reading is the public hearing typically.
Typically, that's
Right,
correct.
okay.
That's
I
right.
would tend to lean closer towards Tom's point of view, because I don't think the summer is a good time to bring up controversial issues. If you want the input from the people that you
Okay.
want.
Yeah, we definitely want the input. Okay.
And, you know, I mean, I don't know what the first date is in October.
October 3rd.
So whatever that is.
So, can I say something? So, all right, so we have a letter from the attorney, okay? And it's obviously showing a lot of concern with this document, right? I mean, at some level, that's got to concern you guys too, right? I mean, we'd be going directly. Yeah, I know, you love a, whatever.
He loves a
All
good
right,
fight.
so he's the wrong person to ask, okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, okay, this is what we have, all right? So he's telling us this is how we should proceed. You know, he's giving us his opinion and he's telling us how to proceed. What about if we had the document, is there another way of introducing a document that has some of Joe's concerns introduced, as well as making it something or somewhat better legally?
John, I was in the impression that this was from Bart. That's what I was in the impression, so.
That was drafted by staff.
Okay, so that's the first problem.
Bart has reviewed this document, and he said that there are hidden dangers lacking in the procedures set forth in the proposed ordinance by staff, in brackets. So may I suggest this, that, I mean, we've got the chairman, the vice chair, we got members here from the planning board, and so they're not gonna have to interpret through the newspaper or minutes or whatever as to what we're talking about. That, why don't we impart direction to them, or request to them, of what we want to happen, as opposed to trying to deal with a document that may be flawed, and to say, we want you guys to go off, we want you to look at the PUD in its current form, marry it with the experience that you're gaining at drinking from a fire hydrant here with this experience they're getting with it, and at some point in time, and we can put some framework around what that means, come back to us with suggestions for modifications. Then we take those suggestions and modifications, we give them to staff. Staff takes those suggestions, turns it into a piece of legislation that perhaps would be more acceptable from a legal standpoint. And then we have something a little more robust that has more experience embedded in it, that we might feel more comfortable. And I'd be comfortable with that. I just think we're way too early.
I don't have a problem with that approach, except that, why don't we just ask Bart what he thinks? You know, he's got to have an idea of what, you know, Joe's proposing here. Maybe he can propose something, and then just to kind of short circuit a lot of that stuff, then send it to through that process.
What Bart doesn't have is the PUD experience. I mean, he's never administered a PUD.
That's fine too.
So I'm thinking that.
I was just trying to
No,
cut out
I
his step.
appreciate that, but I think the wealth of knowledge is accumulating in our planning board right now, and, I mean, you're on that planning board as well, so you're accumulating that, so maybe you along with the planning board, can help, you know, somewhere down the road, write a piece of legislation that might satisfy the intent, what we're trying to do, but not get so far out in front of it that, hey, we might have missed something, or we might be sending.
Or scare somebody off.
You know, I was just gonna say that, to Sean's point, we might be sending a message into the development community that we may be unintentional consequence of this that could be a detriment.
Well, again, because of the legislature giving those three options, I think the meeting that we had, and we asked Bart, my recollection of that was that he would, of course not for Woodmont, but for future PUDs, if we were to make a change with this, that the final master plan would be signed off by the town council. I think some of the things that he mentioned being a problem is the process, not the final sign-off. So again, to try to provide oversight is what I was looking for, and frankly, I thought this was from Bart. Yes.
Yeah, just for clarification, you mentioned Woodmont a little bit earlier and talked about maybe they could help, the planning would use some assistance making some of these policy decisions with zoning. I think that's what I heard you say. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but anyway, just so you understand the way the process would work, is the planning board would still do its thing with the PUD. And then it would make a recommendation to the council based on their recommendation to adopt the PUD. And so the planning board would still go through its process, make its recommendation. The planning board at that point either approve it, deny it, or modify it.
And then that would come for our signature the way other things come, right?
Well, but my point is that if I want to make sure that you're clear, is that during the initial process of PUD as proposed under this ordinance, the planning board will still be an independent body,
right,
making its own recommendations and actions on any applications. And then that finished product would be, as recommended, the planning board would come to the town council, and then you folks would have your bite at the apple.
But I think reading it again, I'm just trying to, if we can stay on that, reading it again, I think that where it continues to say town council, planning board, town council, planning board, and every aspect of it, I think is, again, Bart's not here. I would love to kind of sit in maybe in a conversation with him the next couple of days, but just to try to interpret his notes, maybe that's what he was really worried about, because we're getting into land board issues that we shouldn't be part of. We should be part of the planning board, go through the process the way they've done with Woodmont. Once they've finalized it, they've said this looks good for us, send it up to us for final approval for the zoning aspect of it, which is the master plan, and then that'll be done. That's what we envisioned. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, the process probably is best set forth on the 2834 and 2835, which says that the planning board makes a written recommendation of approval, denial, or approval with conditions on the PD application to the town council, and then the council goes through and has their public hearing on the application.
Yep.
See, but the part we're missing here is what Bart said is the town council creates zoning. That is correct. The town council created a PUD zone. When we create zoning, we give the authority to the planning board to manage that zone. We did nothing different than we've ever done before. That's what he said. So when he says the things he says in his letter, that's what he explained to us. We gave up nothing. We gave the authority to the planning board, as we do under every zone. And we do that on all zoning. That's what he said.
Okay, so where are we at?
Just one point of view. I would ask the chairman of the planning board to come here on October 3rd with some sort of point of view from the planning board of what they've learned and educate us some, so that at least we know that we have an action item for sure on October 3rd. And and I don't know if that gives them enough time or not. Somebody probably needs to ask them, but but at least then we know we have some sort of end date, and that we're going to get some information so that we can start figuring out what to do next, if we do anything.
Okay. So let's throw a scenario out there, Dave, and I'll get off of this. I know we got a long agenda. If for some reason there was another 500, 600 acre PUD, it's been defined that once the PUD process starts from conceptualization, that basically the legality of this PUD is started. So what I'm saying is we don't have anything now. What's to say that something's not coming down the road in 2 or 3 or 4 months that's going to capture the same PUD?
Well, I hate to continue punting to legal, but my common sense told me to do that. And if you continue this ordinance discussion to October 3rd, then essentially the current PUD would rule as far as the process and the regulations for that application. My sense is that's what Bart's going to tell me, but I will find out.
I guess the thing to consider is we found out about Woodmont, a couple of years before they came before the planning board. I think something that big, I think we're going to get line of sight to it soon, a lot earlier than a couple of months. I mean, I don't, there's just way too much money involved for people, like, not to come and feel us out, and that's Andre's job. I mean, if he hears something, he's gotta, like, tell Dave, and then we gotta get informed. Or as it has been in the past, I mean, somebody gets contacted, and then we go to Dave.
So if we have a motion to continue this to our meeting October 3rd, we need a second. So we're forwarding this as written?
No, I think
No.
what Tom is suggesting, and Tom, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is he's gonna move this out, so the first reading is October.
Right.
Similar to what you did with the cable issue, you discussed it in March, you said let's have a public hearing, so we brought it back for a first read, another continued first read in June.
And in the interim,
Same process.
they can look at it if they want.
Yeah, and they can bring us back a point of view on
Yeah.
October. Hopefully, they will bring us back a point
Yeah.
of view on October 3rd and say, hey, this is what we've learned. And these are the reasons why X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Is that okay?
No, I think it's too long, but I'll go with what you guys think. I mean,
It's just that nothing, you know, there's a lot of us vacations in the summer
Yeah.
and, yeah.
I mean, even if you moved it forward in its current form, you can't take it up until September, because you get the 90-day period.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what I'm saying.
It's like an
September
additional
means-
month, that's all.
Yeah, but it's just
September-
stop putting the pressure on them because they get other things.
Yeah,
that,
and September means December is all I'm trying to point out. So,
All right.
It took us 2 years to write the first POD.
at the same time, before we vote on this, Dave, can we have legal look at this and maybe even give a rewrite to it? Maybe we can even, at that point, we could scrap it at our next meeting and get a new one in there. I mean, I really thought the reason why this was even on is because I thought Bart looked at it, so that was my,
Dave, just as a suggestion, maybe Bob can just go through it line by line and kind of explain what he thinks is a problem. And then
Right.
without proposing something new, just say, you know, kind of review it.
You're right, I agree, because it's tough for legal to propose an ordinance if he doesn't have a sense of what the policymakers are thinking as far as the direction goes, so.
well,
If I ask him to rewrite, he's gonna say rewrite it.
And that might give us clues about how to fix it, too.
Right.
well, I'm available. I mean, I wanted to present this in the right fashion. It sounds like Bart has a problem with it. I thought we were on the same page, so let's present it in the right fashion, so it's not gonna create a problem.
But, you know, I think the real issue here is that nobody has the experience that we're looking for. And the only thing that'll get us that experience is tea time. We need time. We need to let that fire hose continue to spew out all this information that we need to accumulate and then do something with that information. I don't think, you give it to a really smart attorney, still doesn't have that information. The planning board doesn't have that information yet. They're just starting to accumulate it at a very fast pace. I think it's just a function of time. So I'll acquiesce. I'll go along with the October.
So we get a motion to continue the second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, I got a motion and a second on the table to continue this to October. What was the date on that one?
October 3rd.
October 3rd. Okay, I'm not gonna ask if there's any more discussion, because I think we've talked this one out pretty good. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We've moved this to October 3rd for discussion.
Can I start reading fast again?
Please. That would be outstanding.
Resolution 2011-10, resolution for adopting rules of the order for the town council. Reading is today and adoption is today. Whereas the town council adopted versions of Title I of the Municipal Code and at its May 16, 2001 meeting, and whereas Section 5, Chapter 5 requires the town council to adopt rules of order not inconsistent with the town charter. Now therefore be it resolved that the Londonderry Town Council adopts the attached rules of order. Dave, you want me to motion or you want to talk first?
Probably a motion in a second.
I'll motion.
Second.
Yeah, what we did is we looked at different ordinances, mostly from the, procedures mostly from the town of Salem, and also A lot of this document is a compilation like our ethics code. It's just pulling from different state statutes, but in our case, the town charter. Now, one of the proposed amendments, one of the proposed sections to this rules is any amendments would be presented and then considered at the next meeting. So what I suggest you do to remain consistent also, because it's getting late in the evening, is to have everybody take a look at this, get any comments to me for the next meeting, and then the council hopefully can schedule it for adoption. But it's just,
I would feel much better with that.
it's just a blueprint as to how the meetings would be operated, since currently we don't have any rules of procedure. A public hearing is not required, but I'd still recommend that you look at it for final adoption on June 20th.
Do I have to amend my motion to be adopted on June 20th?
No, that is June 20th, next meeting.
Well, it says, I read June 6th.
To adopt tonight.
Yeah, it should be June 20th. Yep.
So I amend my motion for adoption of June 20th, 2011.
Second amendment. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adopt on the 20th of June. Okay, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0 to move that to the 20th. All right, what else we got?
K.
Is that it?
No, item K.
Oh, okay. Discussion regarding workforce housing at Woodmont. Boy.
I'm surprised everybody left. Just kidding. I was waiting for you guys to wake up.
So I saw this part of the meeting, I think, about workforce housing, and didn't he withdraw it?
No, I thought he suggested that he would be amenable to doing up to 10% of the 1,300 homes as workforce housing, but it can't count towards his
1,300.
1,300. So if you want it, it's 1,430.
Point of order, Chairman.
Okay.
Discussion regarding the use of Conservation Commission funds for the debt service payments. We skipped over that? I think in one of the-
I'd like to move that out to another meeting.
Okay. Just wanted
Is
to
that
make sure we got
possible?
it.
Why not? They left.
Yeah,
might as
so
well.
let's, can we move that, please? What do we need to do to move that? That discussion?
Just
I'll make-
discussion, go ahead, Tom.
I'll make a motion that we take up item J on our agenda at a future council meeting as scheduled by the chairman.
Okay.
Second.
Second, and we get a second, we'll say. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Just wanted to
Chair
make
votes
sure we're on
affirmative.
target. Sorry. Thank
So we'll look at that at a later date. Okay, so back to what we were talking about on K. We're back on point, so go ahead. You were
Right,
talking to
so
it.
he was saying he would consider adding up to 10% of workforce housing or senior housing, provided it didn't affect his $1,300 market,
1,300 count.
1,300, yeah, excuse me, 1,300 market units in the proposed development.
And I think we just have to be careful not to get trapped into a number, because if we say something like, okay, yeah, we'll approve 10% above the 1,300, well, now we've just approved 1,300, if you use that language. So one of the things I was concerned about is that the fact that and I think the planning board did a very good job. Chairman said, hey, listen, we didn't say 1,300 yet, and we think the number's going to be much less. I think that was a great statement, because it opened everybody's eyes quite a bit in the room, because they were thinking 1,300, and they stated it has to be 1,300. And it was great. I said, well, no, we didn't say you're okay for 1,300 yet, which was great. But the point I'm trying to make is that workforce housing, I mean, I think the economy's kind of come around already and gave us plenty of stock. The values of homes have dropped. So I think we've already created a good amount of stock in workforce housing, just because of the way the economy has dealt with values around town. So I'd like to just define that, and I've been asking for a while now, being involved with it. Mike's asked me directly, can you get the town to define this for us so that we can go forward? Because it's really been a question of density. Density's been the one that's been, I've been getting the most information about. So I'm hoping that we can try to make some recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, you mentioned Mike. You want to help for the minutes who Mike is?
I didn't say Mike.
Yeah, you did. Mike, is it
Mike
Kettenbach?
I'm sorry.
Kettenbach?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah, Mike Kettenbach. Sorry. Apologize.
All right, so I talked to the planning board chairman about this. He talked to me, and this whole workforce housing thing was, as you probably all remember, was very controversial, and was really downshifted from the state and made mandatory. In discussion with him, kind of came to the conclusion that we put an ordinance in place, and we know how many units we're supposed to have, and it's nice that he's saying he's going to be flexible, but the community was really strong about how they felt about workforce housing, and we worked through a relatively complex ordinance.
It was
a long process. I don't know if we should probably just lean on that ordinance or not. But I'd probably like to get maybe Tim or Andre's opinion or something like that, because we might be better off just leaning on the ordinance, because the community
And it's already there to protect
really
us.
spoke about how they felt about workforce housing in their opinion.
Because we get 16, right now the units that are allowed are no more than 16 per. The only exception we had to that was the elderly housing exemption that we put to 20.
Yeah, but I think that's just the size of the building. But I think Andre, if you don't mind coming to the mic, did you say that at one of the meetings that we have a sufficient amount of workforce housing already, based off of what that ordinance would ask us to have in town? Maybe I'm getting this misunderstanding. So was that Tim or was that you? I remember one of the meetings that we had that came up.
Yeah, again, Andre Guerin, Community Development Director. When we went through the workforce housing ordinance, and as the board remembers, that was a long process. It came up at the time because the economy had reached a certain level where they were suppressing some of the prices, and so the inventory of affordable or housing units that would meet the affordable level were high in Londonderry. It was greater than 50% of the household stocks in Londonderry were met the threshold. I think it was also brought up at the time that you just couldn't count on a recession to suppress the prices. They keep them that way.
But unfortunately, how long ago was that?
Was that a couple of years ago when we went through
So
that?
it started, I think, in 2008.
So unfortunately, I think if we had some real estate people in here, they would probably tell you that the economy has done quite a bit of a difference. It made quite a bit of a difference where the values of our homes, I know at least mine, has gone down. And so some of those homes that might not have met that criteria before certainly are now.
Yeah.
So
and also, too, you also have to keep in mind, too, that the median income of the households could fluctuate as well. I just don't know what that number is right now. It was 96.5 2 years ago, but that could be reduced whatever depending on the economy as well.
So I guess where I'm getting at with that is if we don't have to have any there, I don't think we should. I think that's the direction that I think I would like to see us give him an answer as quickly as possible, so that we can take that number. If he's going to start at 1,300, I'd like to have the 1,300, and then instead of 1,300 plus always, 1,300 plus this, 1,300 plus that, 10% there, 10%. Let's make a decision on it. And if we're, as far as the town goes, Londonderry, if we have enough stock, if we do the study and we have enough stock to meet the guidelines or the enforcement piece, then let's move forward with an answer to them and say we're not going to ask you to have any workforce housing. One thing that I would like to be seen in there, I know it's not on this agenda, but one of the things that I have heard quite a bit was senior affordable. I think it works well. I think a couple of people that were representing the Woodmont development was still here, but one of the things that I think we've seen in all the weekend meetings is that this type of housing helps this type of community where it's kind of tight knit. It's really it brings a lot of services to those people, the seniors that actually need that type of density. So I know it's not on there yet. I know it's too late to but that's another thing I'd like to kind of consider. I think it was the two questions that they were actually asking. It was affordable and senior, I think, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm trying to answer two. Be expedient about it.
Tom?
Just answering the mail here. Councilor Frieder is requesting input on whether the council should request inclusion of workforce housing component in Woodmont. My vote would be no, we should not request inclusion of workforce housing in Woodmont. Let's rely on our ordinance that's in place and not request any additional workforce housing.
I would agree with that.
So I think the ordinance is, God, I was hoping not to have to talk about this again. Well, always comes up with a win.
Come on, it was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was painstaking, but anyway.
Just, I guess my problem with being asked about this thing is, if you have an ordinance that says you can do X, isn't he, by saying I'm going to do this in consultation with the town council, basically circumventing the ordinance? Well, I mean, if he's not required to do it under the ordinance, why is he talking about doing it with the?
I don't know, other than it's come up in several of the discussions they've had on their independent meetings on Thursdays and Saturdays, that there was a desire of some of the people that attended those meetings that they wanted to see it. But, you know, much like when the ordinance was created as an inclusionary ordinance, that anybody at any time, if they propose a residential development, can include affordable housing in there.
Is that the ordinance now?
Correct.
Okay. But is he kind of laying the groundwork for, I don't have, you know, the next development? Him coming in and saying, or the town expecting them to build something that they're not required to do?
If your question is the town expecting them to build something that is not currently being discussed?
Let's say we took Mr. Kentenbeck's offer for 10% of his proposed 1,300 homes. Yeah. And another developer comes along and we say, well, what about 10% for this development? I mean, is that's not what the current ordinance?
No, the current ordinance is based on the current state law that Londonderry has to make available.
Just an opportunity. Yeah.
It doesn't say you have to require, there is no magic number out there. It's just that, are we in compliance with the law? Yes, we are.
That's my concern, is if we're making it almost like a condition of the PUD.
Again, that was brought up.
I know he brought it up. I'm not saying, you know, but you're...
You know, and whether or not the board wants to act on that, I mean, from the staff perspective, I think we asked that at the question at the meeting when the Woodmont project was discussed, whether or not affordable housing was going to be made part of it, and could it be made part of the 1,300 units that were already on the table. And that's where it spurred that response that there would be an addition to. I said, well, what can it be a part of?
Or nothing less than heard.
So.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right.
Ready?
Go for it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the town council does not request inclusion of workforce housing component into the Woodmont Commons master plan.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of supporting the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative. Motion carries 5-0.
Motion that we approve the minutes of our council meeting on 5/16.
I would just like to thank the planning board for coming out. It's been a long night, and yeah, thank you for coming out tonight.
Warming up. Make a motion that we approve the minutes of our meeting on 5/16/2011.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second for the meeting minutes. Anybody have any questions on them? No? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes affirmative. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, other business. Liaison reports. Joe, we'll start with you today.
I have none.
Tom Frieda.
None.
Mr. Dolan? Mr. Farrell?
While I didn't attend the school board meeting, I have seen all of them throughout town, and while they are happy to continue the delightful relationship we have between Nate and Dave, the consensus is that if they can find something, we're willing to talk to them about it, but we don't know that there's anything to find. But it's up to Dave and Nate to figure it out.
I think the two of them should go to lunch.
Dave, does that sound amenable to you? Well put. Okay, town manager report.
Just two things quickly. Senior housing, our partner's looking at a different piece of property. They've come to learn that the HUD environmental review officer is very leery of any properties which they perceive to have environmental issues. Our environmental engineer is convinced ours does not, but they've looked at a different piece of property, North Londonderry, and they're negotiating with the buyers, and hopefully we'll be submitting an application this year because the deadline was extended to the end of June on a 48-unit housing project, so we'll keep you informed. Second issue is the library roof. We received 5 or 6 bids, which range between $42,000 and $84,000. So obviously we're sifting through those to see which ones make the most sense for us. And so I'm sure we'll be proceeding this month with the lowest responsible bidder.
Can I make a comment on that one, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, hold on one second. I just wanted to tidbit into that one. I'll let you, I know what you're going to ask.
Okay.
So in the bids, are we going to make sure that we use plywood and not particle board?
That's the plan.
Joe?
Actually, that was part of my question.
I thought you were going to ask where we were on looking into the past and how it happened.
Yeah, no, well, that was my question. I mean, if it was my home and that happens, I'd be finding out why they would use inferior products that we did not approve and go after them. So I'm not really sure. Maybe you know something I don't. Why aren't we going after the old?
If you'd want to discuss this in legal after, I'd be more than happy to do that. I shouldn't discuss those issues in public session.
Okay, good.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for clarifying. Rookie mistake.
I don't know if I don't ask.
That's right. It's all good. All right, Dave, anything else? You're good, okay. All right.
Mr. Clark has his hand up.
Mr. Clark, would you like to address?
May I make a final comment before you adjourn?
That would be wonderful, sir. Oh, actually, hold on one second. I do have one thing before we adjourn.
Okay.
Board committee reappointments and appointments. We need a council representative for the master plan steering committee.
I'll be happy to do it.
Okay.
If anybody else wants to do it.
We have a volunteer. Anybody else have any problem with it?
No, it's fine with me.
All right, there's no objections, Joe. You're the council rep for the master plan steering committee.
Do we have people that have been selected for that yet?
The planning board did that already.
They get 4 people, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Clark, you get the minute. Go ahead.
Reed Clark, 79 Stonehenge Road. I wonder if there's a way you can eradicate the last sentence of the first paragraph of your whatever the agenda.
The 10 o'clock stuff?
Huh?
Is that the 10 o'clock stuff?
It says, unless previously
Otherwise notified.
yeah, unless otherwise notified.
I've got no problem with that. I don't really understand
The
what's
last
on there.
3 have been 10:40, 10:55.
And it's past your bedtime, isn't it?
No.
Let me.
No, I don't go to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, okay.
I don't mind.
He's a party animal.
But it's
I have a thought.
Okay, well, hold
a
on.
lie, but it's whatever you want to call it.
I have a. Reed,
Change it to 9?
No, Reed, I have a thought on that. I mean, I know
That's good.
you're poking at us and half joking with us, but half serious too. But I was traveling not too long ago, and the exciting life that I have, I happened to be in my hotel room watching one of the local council meetings that was happening.
You were
in whatever community I was in. I know I have.
I've seen the one
I know
from
I probably
Bartlett.
need counseling, but let me say that there was a process that I observed that we're talking about town council rules in this context. But the way this council did it is they had a predetermined agenda time, let's say 10 o'clock. And if they got to 10 o'clock and they still had business to conduct, the board had to vote to extend the meeting 15 minutes. And I believe they could do that twice, and to a maximum of 2 extensions. But if the board voted no, we're not extending, then the meeting was adjourned at that point, and any further agenda items were postponed to a future meeting. But, you know, that's a thought of how you address this, you know,
Overlapping.
this, you know, when does the meeting end?
Well,
Process, and if you want to extend it, then you vote to extend it, and if you don't want to extend it, then you don't.
shut the lights off.
So, Dave, I don't know if that's a part of the rules that we might consider adopting, but that's just I observed that another council
that's
is
good.
how they behave with their rules.
I just would speak to that for a minute, if I may. Again, you know, I'm a proponent to make this board work a lot harder than it has in the past by not having those summer days off. I think you know, it's not a bad thing. I don't know if it'd be a bad thing to have 3 councilors here. I mean, to have a quorum and have some business being done. Those people that aren't on vacation. I mean, in corporate America, we have a calendar that we say, hey, this is when we're going on vacation, and sorry, wrong time to have a coughing fit. And we just plan it accordingly. So those that aren't here, I think trying to fit so much into an agenda makes these meetings go longer. And, I mean, we didn't get to half the agenda, and that's just going to go on to the next agenda, and it's going to be even bigger. So, you know, having less meetings is not the answer, I don't think, but that's just me, and I'll shut up now because the 4 of you are going to start throwing tomatoes at me.
Actually, we did pretty well with the agenda we had, Joe. We did cover a lot tonight. There was only a couple of things we pushed out. And that made sense to do that because of discussions right now. It wasn't fair to the people that left that might want to have some input into it. So
I'm good with whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
10 o'clock thing's always been a little silly, but this
Yeah,
is
I'm
sort of
okay with
interesting.
I'm okay with taking that off as one member. That's fine. We can strike that. But if we want to talk about you know, adopting that, that's fine. But I think the problem we run into is during budget season, and you know, all bets are off on that. So.
Well, I mean,
But I'm okay with taking it off the meeting.
We make our own rules, so
Right.
you can have special rules for budget season, I guess.
Sure.
If you take it off and stay till 1 o'clock, I'll still be here.
Thank God for that.
Is it necessary to read all the resolutions and stuff on the record? Can we just waive them?
Waive the readings. We did that a
Yeah.
couple of times tonight.
Yeah, that
Well, there's something in the charter about that, actually. Let me review it again.
Oh, we do it at town meeting, but that's moderator's rules.
But that's by vote.
Look at the way we shorten the planning board meetings. We used to read everything, now we
Yeah.
read nothing.
We can make the resolutions a lot shorter, a lot briefer as well.
Yeah.
We do that, that's very easy to do.
Sounds good.
So, anyway,
That'll streamline us a little bit.
motion to adjourn.
Second.